is set. The Nürburgring 24 hours is coming up at the end of May, but there are many, many hurdles to be cleared between now and then. This great race builds with every year, started in 1970 and provided highlights ever since around the greatest circuit in the whole world, the Nürburgring Nordschleife. My name is Bruce Jones. I thoroughly enjoy all the races on this, particularly my colleague alongside, Peter Snow.
The only thing we could do better is go and take part in the race, Bruce.
Yes, there is a thought. Right, plenty of track time, which is the key, not just for drivers that don't know the circuit, but those that do, to find their way. But looks a little bit damp out there. Wet conditions as Patrick Seaman and Emily Miller are down there on the grid and looking forward to all that is going to be good. They're going to be getting the interviews, and we have 90-plus cars coming out to play in the first of the two qualifying races tonight. It's a 2-hour race. Then we've got super qualifying tomorrow, the top qualifying, and then a 4-hour race, just like a normal VLN event in so many ways.
It's quite extraordinary that a 4-hour race is qualifying for the event. It's just 30 minutes normally, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. But no, go and have a 4-hour race.
Well, you know what? It gets all the drivers through the system, gives them a chance to work towards what they've got to do in the main event. But the fact that they're having to go out on the wet this evening means they could get some very, very useful experience. But there's so much to manage in this because we're going to have 100 and XXX cars competing at the end of May. So keeping a handle on all of that is always a very tricky thing. And I have full admiration for the people that are the race director and all the officials that manage not just these races, the top qualifying as well, but the big one at the end of May. But right now, for the teams, the tire trolleys are being pushed up and down the pit lane. The slick tyres are being put back in the garage. Not of much use, I would suggest, as we get ready to go out onto the grid for this 2-hour race. The grid has already been set, but yes, it's building up. It's building up. It's about track time, and for a lot of the drivers, if they haven't done a lot of races here, they have to have their ring license to take part in the event. But you always have so much to learn. Every day is a different day on the Nordschleife, Snowy. Yeah,
because there's just so much to it, isn't there? As we said many a time, 25-kilometre lap, 8 minutes for the top category cars, SP9 as we call them here in the NLS series, GT3 cars as they are. They're not quite a full GT3 car, as in, well, they are, but very, very slightly down-tuned. There's a little bit less aero, tiny bit less power, largely because the magic number for the organisers is that 8-minute lap. They don't really want much going on the 8-minute lap. For various reasons of safety, etc., etc. Now, the track is absolutely soaking. We saw that sign at the exit of the pit lane there, wet race. But it's not raining anymore a great deal. There's a couple of cars going out with wipers on. That's merely because they're following other cars out, so they've got a bit of spray behind them. So that opens the question of, we've got a bit of qualifying now, and then we've got a 2-hour race. So we've had qualifying already, haven't we?
Yeah, we're just ready for the 2-hour race.
For the 2-hour race. So is it going to dry out? And of course, it's going to go into the dusk as well.
It is. It's already looking very gloomy, but of course, it's local time just coming up towards 10 to 7. So yes, they will have a lot to take in. But right now, it's very much jackets on but hood down for those walking out onto the grid. And for the drivers going around on a Citer, certainly even at low speed, looking at a Porsche Cayman, we have bit of spray, and one of the cars, unfortunately, the car that was fastest by the looks of things, has taken a spin. Is that the Get Speed one that was fastest? In practice today, it was the Get Speed number 2 that was fastest of all. And just trying to work out which car inside it. It's the other Schnitzel. It's another Schnitzelam. It's another Mercedes. It's the Schnitzelam car, number 11, that was very well placed. In fact, it was second fastest. That's why it has 0-2 on the windscreen. Sorry, that threw me. That's the car shared by Kenneth Heyer, Colin Carasani, Luca Sandro Treffs and Marcel Marshevitz, and it's looking remarkable because it's sitting at 90 degrees to the direction of flow, sitting across the track, having obviously spun as it went around. But all is okay. Yeah, it was a long shot. Looking across the barriers, and the car is actually just on the start-finish straight, just up on its jacks. They put it at 45. That's what they're doing. They're going to be putting them, by the looks of things, into echelon formation. There I was thinking it had spun halfway around the Grand Prix loop, but it hasn't at all. That was a long shot that tricked me.
Which is the first car along with the Phoenix car, there, wasn't it? Alongside behind the safety car, the Audi R8 safety car. Interesting, that wet race notice at the pit exit is really a notifier that you can you can change tyres on the grid if you wish to. So why anybody would have gone out to anything other than wets, I cannot imagine. But it is an official notification. I've got to check the rules exactly, but it is more to say, if you started on this tyre, we're declaring it is a wet race, you may change onto wets. But I would imagine most of the teams would have probably done that already.
I think they'd have triggered it. But tell you what, at school we used to have a red dot that went up in the bursar's window, which meant if it was very hot, above a certain temperature, you could take your tyre off. But I must say, that's a first for me to think a car had a spin, to find out when it went from a different camera that the car was sitting on the start-finish straight, attended by mechanics rather than marshals. But hey-ho, chalk that one up.
It was a good call. It's those cunning long shots, isn't it? That's what it was. You said the long lens focused in.
Yes.
And perfectly, just where the number was, where the bonnet, we had a man standing in front of it, blocking the number. So
well, I could
just to confuse us even more, why is it facing that way before it's got to the grid, and we don't even know what car number it is?
Well, we're now
testing us, Jones.
Yes, exactly. It said 02 on the windscreen, so right, for those who are going out around the circuit to get a bit of a sighter, one of the many BMW in the junior classes going around now. That's car number 82. It's quite hard to pick out in the dark. It really is quite murky. It's Gitty Tyres sponsored. That's shared by a driver from Beijing. That's Rainy Hay, Andy Yan and Sunny Wong, both from Hong Kong. So that again just shows the international draw of this race. They'll have all had to have earned their ring license to take part, and that is such a draw. They come back again and again, and certainly they will be very short of experience of the Nordschleife in all conditions, but most notably in rain, and rain going into darkness. But who knows what the weather's going to be when we get to the end of the May for the ADAC 24 hours of the Nürburgring. But conditions really are rather nasty out on the circuit. Drivers just trying to decipher and establish exactly how tricky it is out there. And the Dürr Motorsport Aston Martin car number 69, that's one of the SP9 runners, one of 30 plus, and that's not a bad driver lineup. Phil Dürr of the family and Darren Turner of huge success. He's had a busy few weeks. He put up a picture during the week going, last week I drove a GT3 Aston Martin, a GT1 Aston Martin, a Valkyrie, and a very early Aston Martin. What was the very early one? Was it on a day?
Pre-war Aston Martin.
Yeah, definitely pre-war, from the 30s. And again, there were lots of those out at the Goodwood members meeting last weekend, and I must say I still have a particular penchant for the Aston Martin Ulster. Such a great looking car. And the ones that Nick Mason's team 10/10ths run are just beyond reproach in terms of their preparation.
Wonderful to see those cars out again, and I was very privileged today. I was on a day with Darren Turner at Goodwood, just pre that event, and got to drive Sir Malcolm Campbell's 1933 Le Mans Aston Martin around the circuit in its original bluebird blue colour.
Wow.
But the thing you have to forget about these cars, you have to remember when you get to drive it, is the pedals are the wrong way round. So you've got the clutch on the left, accelerator in the middle, brake on the right, and it's an H-pattern 4-speed gearbox which starts nearest to you and works away towards the left-hand side.
Good Lord.
So it's very,
and you have to drive it.
You have to drive
not
it
just
well.
sit in it.
Yes, and do manual advance and retard on the ignition and things like that. So they're much more immersive. I'm sure Darren enjoyed getting back into a modern GT car where you just press a button, job done.
Yeah. So the cars are being lined up in echelon formation. That means they're at 45 degrees to the angle of attack, and tail towards the grandstand side of the circuit, nose towards the pit wall, and it will take quite a while for this all to get into position to get underway. But I must say, the fact there are raindrops, fresh raindrops with every few seconds on the lenses of almost all the cameras that we've looked at so far, which are the ones in and around the pits, the start-finish straight, and a few just around the Grand Prix loop. Obviously, just catching the action as the cars go around to just find out how wet it is. Right, cars at the front of the grid. Two Mercedes on the provisional front row, well, on the front row, no provision about it. And it's car number 2, which is shared by Adam Christodoulou and Danny Junkerdea. That's Team Gatsby's Mercedes. Now, the man who's very responsible is Walter Hornung, who's the race director. He's standing there, rain on his shoulders and rain on his head without his hood, but standing there putting on a brave face. But he's got a lot to attend to through the course of the 3 days here on the Nordschleife at the qualifying weekend. He's got to make sure everyone's behaving and reaching the standard required. He's got to keep on top of all the changing weather conditions out there, and Emily Miller is drilling him for answers to the questions, but Walter has a huge amount of experience in this, and you could ask for no one better because there is so much to consider. It means, obviously, if you're running a race at a more standard circuit like a Silverstone or a Hockenheim, there is less to consider. But here he has so many permutations and variables with the 170 odd corners around the mighty 25-kilometer Nordschleife. Throw in the weather and anything can happen. And one point that we always talk about when looking at the Nürburgring is the fact that there are so many corners on this lap, but on top of that, there is so little space between the edge of the track once you're on the Nordschleife and the barriers. And today, of course, the grass is wet. Even in the dry, it gives you only the blink of an eye to try and save any moment. But seriously, anybody going over the curbs today might be not just hindering this race, but also the next one as well, which is tomorrow, and taking themselves out of the top shootout as well.
Of course, that's it. It's collateral damage. Obviously, curbs, wet, painted, not an ideal mix. And we know that we've said before so many times, there's such a narrow gap at the side of this track on so many parts. Certainly, that initiation, as I call it, going through the Sabine-Schmitz curve from GP circuit onto the Nordschleife, down to the Hats and back. You have not much more than a car's width of grass either side. And of course, the grass is now soaked as well, so it just picks up cars on grass, pick up wet grass, pick up speed. It's not a great idea. I suspect Walter Horning's down there checking as well in Germanic fashion, of course, that the you mentioned about the echelon layout of the cars. They have to be at a certain angle. They have to be the back of the car to be 1 meter from the white line you can see at the edge of the track, and the cars need to be 2 meters apart. And if you don't believe me, I have to diagram in the rules.
I was fully prepared to believe you, but I also believe the latter element of that as well. Oh, that is a thing of great beauty. So there'll be someone down there with a giant protractor trying to make sure the cars are all as efficient. I said 45 degrees, not 42.
And just to show no favouritism in the rules, the cars are indicated and all the cars are the same number to make sure there's no favouritism.
That's very good. But if you're just joining us as we prepare for the first of two qualifying races this weekend ahead of the Nürburgring 24 Hours, which comes to us at the end of May, hopefully in sunshine rather than the rain. Track conditions look pretty nasty. Grey clouds. It has been raining heavily. The grass will be wet. The track will be marginally drier and will dry rather sooner. And for race director Walter Hornung, he has a lot to consider. Right, cars lining up on the grid. And when I say lining up on the grid, if you weren't with us a moment ago, they are lining up in grid order, but not in 2x2 or 2x3 formation, but 1x1x1, with all the cars with their tail towards the outside of the circuit, lined up at 45 degrees in echelon formation, ready to take the start. Now, also, it's not static as the cars are moved into position. It's also still a stream of cars coming out of pit exit, with the drivers choosing to go for a little lap around the Grand Prix loop rather than the full Nordschleife to just take a sighter to conditions. Any car even running at about 40k is putting up quite a lot of spray, so things are rather difficult indeed. But then again, it's rather better to practice in these damp conditions than it is to go into the race without a lot of experience of this circuit, on top of which this circuit in the wet, it is a different beast entirely, and it really, really has some claws. It's all Mercedes front row, by the way. It's Get Speed number 2, shared by Adam Christodoulou and Danny Juncadella. Schnitzelarm number 11 is second on the grid. Kenneth Heyer. Dutch racer Colin Karasani, he's the least experienced. Young Lucy Treffs, that's Lucas Andrew Treffs, and Marcel Marshevitz. And Marcel, there's hardly a race that goes on without him involved. But Danny Juncadella is the driver on pole. He's being interviewed by Patrick Simon, and rather suitably, Snowy, he has an umbrella over his head. We think the rain has eased, but you don't want to get in the car, put your helmet on slightly damp, for risk of steaming up your visor and all the other things that can go. But
it's not great for visibility. But you just mentioned about the track, of course. Is it dry all the way around? That's the point. We often talk about this circuit being dry on certain parts and damp or wet at other parts. Well, of course, the reverse can happen. It's pretty sodden on the pit straight, as we can see looking out. Said Danny Juncadella, there's not a lot of rain falling, but obviously there's enough to warrant an umbrella for the drivers and crew. A lot of people not bothering, so I think it's just that sort of fine mist, as it were, now. But not ideal when you're getting into a race car.
No, I think...
And then you've got the Nordschleife to contemplate. But of course, drivers want the track one or the other, not that bit in between. And that's the bit you don't like, because it's neither one thing or the other.
No,
fully wet, great. Fully dry, it's fine. You know where you are. It's a reference. But now, and this is going to change. Of course, then the cars, if the rain stays off, and then we have cars going around, 10 minutes to go. And we have cars going around, so we've got 90 cars going around. That's going to drive the track out even quicker. So it's going to be super changeable. And one of the big things that we love about this circuit is, because it's so long, normally you have, let's say, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes for a race lap. You don't have that choice here. You can set off, you've got another 8 minutes plus in the dry to come back around and get to make a decision. So you've really got to be on your game and got to be, relying on your team, strategists, etc., tyre wear, feeling that degradation in the tyres. It's always down to the driver to what the right tyres are. You start another lap and all of a sudden you're losing grip, and these tyres the performance will just fall off a cliff. They won't just suddenly go 2 seconds a lap slower. It can suddenly be 5, 10.
Now, I actually sense the rain is starting to come back because Patrick seems a little hunkered down. 2 drivers on the front row. Adam Christodoulou second and Danny Juncker in pole position. Then we go back to row number 2 and Shearer PHX. If you haven't been following events through the early rounds of the Nürburgring Rangstrecken Series this year, we've been used to the Shearer Sport team and to Phoenix Racing. They've combined forces and look to be a mighty force. They've got a car 3rd on the grid, a car 5th on the grid, and a car 8th on the grid. Vincent Kolb is the driver who'll be starting the car that is 2nd on the grid, and that is number 5, which he shares with his long-time partner in crime, if you will, Frank Stippler. They've had some great races together. But what one focuses on, the normal NLS race through the course of the season, the sort of standard, I know we have some different length races, they're 4 hours. Normally have, you could pit stop at the top of each hour. The SP9 class cars have to pretty much do that. But this is just 2, so I think you just split it down the middle. 2-hour race. But really today the story is about keeping out of trouble. I think that's going to be a very, very key element to this, because it's going to be much easier to drop it and cause your whole weekend a massive setback than it is to keep it on the narrow stuff. So let's just hope they can all get it right. Conditions are very, very tricky indeed. Martin Ragginger will be starting the car from 4th on the grid. That's the better placed of the 2 Falcon Motorsport Porsches. And again, looking marginally pensive there, but a lot of these drivers at the front end come with a considerable amount of experience of this circuit in all weather conditions. And right now, it's just the fact that the light is falling so fast that I think is going to be a factor that they have to really consider. But I really do sense the rain is just starting to come back. But as Peter pointed out, it could be at any point on the circuit. Very different indeed. Even a couple of days ago at home, I was driving around through driving rain, got home a kilometre down the road, bone dry. It happens, and it obviously happens a whole lot more in the Eifel Mountains, much higher up.
Yes, I mean, changeable doesn't really do it justice, but that's exactly what it is. Just looking at the times for this grid here, so Danny Juncker in the Mercedes on pole position there. 8 minute 13 was his best lap, at 8:17 by the end. 14:7 for Cesarani in the Schnitzelau Mercedes alongside it, the car that was parked jauntily and caught us both out. So interesting times there, because not a mile off normal race times.
I think they probably squeaked them in just in the nick of time.
Exactly,
and then
I was just thinking, they must have just got them in when it was 80 plus 90% dry. So they won't be anything like that pace to start with. Kevin Estre, just being interviewed now, our famous pass on the grass man.
He has a free pass to the Nürburgring 24 hours, because that move alone was the move of the decade.
Wasn't it just?
And some of the people watching have only just started breathing again. But Kevin, in clearly very, very good form, but clearly not also the start driver in the 911 Manthey Racing Porsche. That's the one in the bright yellow, bright green, the car that we've described as Grello over the years, green and yellow. That's shared with, yeah, absolutely so. And in these conditions, TV camera person's favourite. You can pick that out in all the Stygian gloom around this circuit. He's sharing with Michael Christensen and Frederick Makovici. So, as you say, more experience than you can shake a stick at.
Yeah, definitely a B team, that, isn't it? Yeah. It's not,
yes.
It's not an A lineup, that is it? At all.
Yeah, I couldn't find any ringers whatsoever. That's starting 6th on the grid. Next down is the second of the Falcon Motorsport Porsches. They run as 44 and 33. And then we go to the world of 101, which is one of the Falcon Horse Motorsport cars, Kuba Gimnaziak. Quite handy around the ring. Last year's champion in the Nürburgring Langstrecken series, so brings huge experience. He's sharing that with Christian Cronjes, and Christian knows what it takes to win a 24-hour race, having done that at Spa back in, the years back, 2018. So we've got that mixture of Mercedes, Audis, Porsches, and BMWs towards the front of the grid. BMW is sort of the least well placed. Their best car is the one in 9th place overall. So we'll have to watch for that. But the BMWs this season have been very handy indeed. Certainly the M4 GT3 has become quite a weapon of choice. And the sister car from Falcon Horse Motorsport fills the top 10.
Yeah, right next to it, doesn't it? Yeah, with Andy Soucek, Jake Dennis, and Jens Klingman.
I like the sound of that lineup, actually, I must say.
I mean, it's been the car. I mean, there's 3 of them: 100, 101, 102. It's been the car to beat this year. It's won all 3 NLS rounds so far. The M4 has. We said when it first came out, the first couple of runs, it ran really quite well to start with. But didn't they pull it from the very first
that's right.
NLS round just to save it or something?
It was in and out.
Yeah,
and
it was just using it to test. I think they didn't want to show their hand too much and get bopped, as it were, straight away and balance the performance. But this year, it's certainly been the car to have in NLS.
Right.
N24, it's never been successful yet, and that's still that one thing to do, isn't it?
It's in the order book. Right, now, one of the beauties about racing on the Nordschleife is we often get a lot of new machinery introduced here. Today, Mercedes AMG GT2. It's the most powerful GT Mercedes. This is the thing about GT2. Not a lot of people know where to place it, but it's placed as largely a class for gentleman drivers who just want a bit more power. And there's a European series, but look out for the Mercedes. It's car number 46. Qualified by Thomas Jaeger. It's entered by Team HRT. That's the Hout racing team owned by Hubert Hout. They run cars in the top class, but they're debuting it this weekend. Thomas Jaeger set the time. Young British racer Frank Bird and young German racer Elia Earhart are the trio given the responsibility of giving it its first blast in a race. In fact, one's competing down at Monza this weekend as well. So the world debut here and there, but certainly, I think I know which one has the harder task here.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a debut is always fraught with possibilities and jeopardy. But that's exactly why you come and test at the Nürburgring. That's exactly what it is. There's no greater place, no greater arena to go and test a new product. Grid being cleared as we speak.
Yeah, now starting to see the cars in their true colours, which are all slightly muted in the grey, damp conditions. It was dry this morning up to lunchtime, so in fact the qualifying times were set on a properly dry track, but they didn't get a lot of track time. So we'll see what can happen right now. Last few photographers starting to make their way clear, but certainly the cars will kick up a lot of spray when it gets going. 2 hours of racing this evening, and we'll be back covering tomorrow's action. There's plenty of it. Bear in mind, this is only a qualifying weekend. And the national anthem rings out as the car's in position down on the grid. As the lights flash, all coming on, you can see the reflection off the circuit, and certainly for the drivers working their way around at the start of this race, it's going to be a case of being up on their tiptoes. It's going to be very, very tricky indeed. We don't know if the track is fully wet the whole way round, but I think looking at how wet it is on the start-finish straight, we can presume that will definitely be the case for the rest of this circuit. This wasn't a little shower that came through. This was a full inundation, if you will. So on the one hand, the drivers will be nervous about not making a mistake. We haven't talked about the Italian cars. Just outside the top 10, we've got a Lamborghini, and just beyond that, we have the best of the Ferrari 296s, this new model for 2023. makes the 488 a car that always looked very svelte, looked far less svelte. Indeed, it's much lower and pointier in terms of its appearance. Also, Aston Martin Vantage up in about 15th or 16th place. So good mixture of manufacturers. But it's not just cars in the top class, not just SP9. We've got SP10, which is the GT4 class cars. We've got Cup 3 Porsches, we've got Cup 2 Porsches, those are the Porsche Caymans. Sorry, the Cup 2s are the GT3 Cups, the Cup 3s are the Porsche Caymans. We've got production-based cars, and it's not just the drivers and the teams getting their practice in for the event, because I just had a quick look around the back of the circuit. The campers are there as well, just testing that their barbecues are going to work come the summer and the warmer months here. So out for the weekend. I think any time the cars are on the Nordschleife, it's a very, very good drive.
Yeah, just about driver lineups. You mentioned the 296 GT3 Ferrari there, the replacement for the 488 Evo, which you said was quite a piece of kit anyway. Fricadelli Racing running that car with Earl Bamber, Nicky Katberg and David Pittard at the wheel. The only one in the race this time, no Racing One entry this time, because they're actually focusing on running at Monza this weekend.
The life of a GT driver is very, very busy indeed. Comes at them from all angles, and sometimes they need two copies of themselves to fulfill all their contracts, but it certainly leads to a merry-go-round of drivers. But right now, all focus on the first of two qualifying races this weekend. Today it's 2 hours, then we have super qualifying tomorrow, the top qualifying shootout for the top 30, and then a 4-hour race just to get things sorted ahead of the 24-hour race at the end of May.
Just going to have a quick look. I did have a list somewhere, Bruce, of who's got what the camera cars are on this weekend. Bear with me, I shall.
Okay, and while I'm bearing with you, Peter, the car's running all the way down to the Dunlop hairpin. Of course, we don't get to use that most races here during the season, when they use a sort of cut through on the Grand Prix circuit after turn 4, a little short straight, and then they head out into the country onto the Nordschleife. Here they go the whole way down the hill, and I tell you, if you've never been to the Nürburgring and you've only seen it on TV, it looks like a bit of a slope down to the Dunlop hairpin. It really is quite one if you decide to do a track walk. That certainly would work the muscles as you were coming back up the slope again.
It's quite a drop down there, and a huge hairpin there. That fantastic S there, the Schumacher S, so that's quite extraordinary.
A lot of spray, and they're certainly not running anywhere near race pace at the moment. Everybody's got the wipers on, as you can imagine. So quality field of cars here. 30 plus cars in the top class, and for the others as well, it's about experience, it's about track time. And there's a Mercedes GT2 class car, 2 of them in the race. There's also, one a little bit further back, running the SPX class, another one from Team Schnitzler, Michael Grenier, Colin Carosini, who's driving 2 cars this weekend, Merrick Bockman and Jamo Hertling. Now, to start the race, you'd like to start on the track. The number 40 Audi, however, looks very pretty. It's one of the Audi Sport Team Scherer PHX cars. It's bright. It's just a really strong silver and red livery, but it's been pushed down the pit lane without any wheels on it. Now, this is a really amazing combination of drivers. We've got all 3 drivers have won the DTM Championship, a championship that goes up and down, but when they won it, it was for touring cars rather than GT class cars. It has been for the past few years. But Timo Schuyler, champion in 2008, 2009. Martin Tomczyk took over to be champion in 2011. And 2 years later, it was the turn of Mike Rockenfeller, all bagging DTM titles. And of course, Rockefeller has also won Le Mans. Their car, however, will be starting from pit out. Don't know what the problem was. They didn't seem unduly stressed. The only one would be stressed would be the driver, who'd probably quite like some wheels on the car, as it's being pushed along on some jacks. It is a little bit. I mean, it gives him greater ground clearance, it must be said, but...
Just flicking back to the camera cars very quickly before we've got it for you, Bruce. It's the number 31 Mercedes from Get Speed, the pole position car. Is cameras on board, and Falcon Motorsports, Porsche, Audi 40, and the junior team 72 and 44. So they've got camera cars in our top category.
So welcome to the first of 2 qualifying races for the Nürburgring 24 hours. The race is just over a month away, but we've got a 2-hour race this evening, and it really is evening, at the Nürburgring, and then we will head to some very special qualifying shootouts tomorrow with top qualifying for the top 30 runners, and then we'll have a 4-hour race tomorrow afternoon. So the drivers get to qualify in all conditions, probably all shades of light, but we cannot wait to see what happens this evening and this evening alone. It's not a case of only damage limitation, but to be a hero that turns to a zero could be a really unfortunate thing. Conditions are conducive, they're not easy conditions whatsoever, and a lot of drivers will have had that dicky bird, the word from the team boss just telling them what he expects from them. He doesn't expect them to put it into the wall. Conditions really are, I think they're fully foul here on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and around the Grand Prix loop as the cars are just going around behind the safety car, the pace car at the front of the queue, leading them around in formation. They're coming down into the dip before the little right-hand flick and up to the chicane. Slightly less spray at this point, but that's because the drivers have backed off a little bit there.
That's Conrad Motorsport, yeah. Yes, the Audi Sport Team Shearer PHX car with Mike Rockenfeller, Timo Schneider, and aboard Martin Tomczyk. Yeah. Yeah.
First sighting of the cars going to left, very quickly off the Savage Schmitz curve. First 30 or so cars have been through that, now they're going out onto the Volkswagen itself, and it's very, very wet. So any summer circuit lines I can try on the far side. That's the way. And again, you decided to set up a good car to do a full wet race. The last thing you want to do that half a track being tried. So see what's like ahead.
You can just hear it in the background there, the cold steel discs. I know some are going to be carbon, but you can hear the coldness of them as the driver's there. Just a little bit of weaving gently, far more gently, far more carefully than you are when in the dry, flicking the car as much as you do. It's as much about anything else as flexing the sidewalls of the tyres and anything else, not just the tread pattern itself, well, like a pattern, it's not just the tread area, but getting the heat into the sidewalls to get those flexing and moving, because you start using curbs without those being fully warmed up, that's when you can damage sidewalls and have tyre failure. So it's all preventative. That's what you want to do from a driving point of view, but not too hard, obviously. But then you can hear the application of the brakes. They're quite often, I remember doing this quite a lot on these laps, not on a circuit quite this long, but you do quite a lot of left foot braking and accelerate against the brakes to get a lot of heat into them, but also it gets the engine up to temperature, because a lot of induction in a higher gear where it can't move, it helps the engine get a lot hotter quicker, get up to temperature.
25,378 Kilometer gilt es zu meistern.
Oh my gosh, this track is just incredible. This is such a fun place.
I'm sure
it's amazing out there.
This is the whole point of data collection and what you do, and experience talking to other drivers that are experienced on this circuit and how to operate it. And of course, your teams and your strategists know how to do it, and the teams will tell drivers exactly what to be doing here. But you will certainly probably that first bit have some back and get a feel of it. At the same time, the driver's going to be looking at the circuit and seeing where it's wet, where there's potentially standing water, is there any running water, any areas that they think are going to dry out sooner than others. And unbelievably, they will be thinking about overtaking opportunities already, of looking where they might be, where's it likely to unfold, sort of predicting it ahead. And that's what the drivers put into their memory bank of, okay, not for now, but in 3 laps time, which of course here is half an hour, that might be very different with 90 cars going around and clearing it.
Last year and this year, we'll be starting from the pits, not for any penalty problem, but unfortunately for them, well, actually, luckily for us, no penalty problem. That will start from the pits, but that's going to be carrying one of our wireless cameras, one of the onboard cameras. So that should be quite a chase as it comes up from the tail of the field, presumably running alongside the other two that are starting from the pits, which, as we mentioned, were cars number 7 and 40. Number 40 being one of the Shearer PHX Audis. That's the one filled with DTM champions of the past. And number 7, Conrad Motorsports Lamborghini Huracan, shared by Axel Jeffries and Dutch racer Jelmer Berman. This circuit, the Nürburgring Nordschleife, engenders action. Wet conditions sometimes engender a little bit too much action, but it's all experience these drivers need to learn. Generally, one would say, stay off the curbs around the Nordschleife. When they're wet, it's absolutely imperative. It's not just a bit of a wish list, because maybe distracted by at night during the course of 24 hours by the fireworks and the fans in the grandstands and the camps through the woods, but certainly when darkness falls, the difficulty factor, Snowy, just becomes immense.
What is it? It leads to an unexpected disassembly, doesn't it, of the car very quickly if you start using the curve when you shouldn't do. But you're absolutely right, Bruce. The thing is, just in these conditions, you shouldn't do this as a driver, I guess, in some ways. But I think it is. If in doubt, don't. Certainly endurance racing, because you go from 0 to 0, and some people can get away with it. We mentioned Kevin Estre earlier with that, that overtake of what, the decade? I don't know. Certainly one of them. Certainly a contender. But you've got to be absolutely right about it. We also saw how that went wrong last year with the Van Toor brothers, Audi and Grello. Same thing again. What looked innocuous actually on when you see the camera footage of it, didn't look like it wasn't like they were being silly to one another. It just unfolded into Tiergarten, and one of the previous year's winner was taken out, and brother went on to win. It just happened to be two brothers.
Right, let's run down the grid. So starting from pole position, Danny Juncadea, car number 2 from the Get Speed Mercedes. Another Mercedes alongside with Colin Carasani, the Dutch racer, taking on board. I must confess he's still fairly new to my eyes. Second row, number 5 Audi from Shearer Sport PHX, Vincent Kolb. He knows everything about the ring, and what a teammate. Frank Stippler will be taking over later. Then the first of the Porsches from 4th on the grid. That's car number 44 from Falken Motorsport, Martin Ragginger, the Austrian, at the wheel. Kim Lewis Schramm will start number 16 from 5th on the grid. That's another Audi, another from Shearer Sport PHX with Kim Lewis Schramm. Then Michael Christensen, it will be him starting the 911 Porsche from Manthey. That's the Grello car from 6th on the grid. 7th on the grid, Nico Metzel, car number 33. That's the second of the Falken Motorsport Porsches, and the top 8 completed by last year's Nürburgring Langstrecken Series champion Kuba Gimasiak in the best of the BMWs, starting car number 101 from 8th on the grid. So look out for Kuba. He really has grown in strength over the past handful of years, and strength and confidence, great things to have when you're a racing driver. Yeah,
and don't forget also switch manufacturer over the winter. Has gone from being an Audi driver to BMW, as in mid-engine to front engine, a whole different concept, and seems to have adapted him rather well. Doesn't seem to have slowed him down, does it?
Hasn't he done nicely? Yes, I actually thought, well, it might take a round or two. He certainly delivered some just super consistent performances through the course of all of last year, and anybody who competes in the Nürburgring Langstrecken Series gets to race in the hot, in the cold, in the in-between, in the wet, the dry, the dark, and certainly came out on top, and really, went up many positions in my estimation of him. But looking at the driver on pole position, Danny Juncadea, he has hardly put a wheel wrong. Last year, he was the Intercontinental GT Challenge champion, often showing with the likes of Jules Gounon and Raffaele Marciello, creme de la creme of people competing in Mercedes GT3s. So he certainly is on fine form. 9th on the grid will be the second of the Walk on Horse Motorsport BMWs, and with that the Spanish driver, Spanish-Austrian driver actually, Andy Soucek, and the top 10 completed by car number 24. If you're a Porsche fan, you'll like this one. It's Lion Speed by Car Collection. It will have none other than Matt Campbell, the very talented Australian, at the wheel. He's showing that with the other Cole, Patrick Pile and Mathieu Jaminet. Mathieu just is very much on Porsche's books as one of their stars. Then the Lamborghini that we did espy out there on grid is not the Conrad one. That's starting from the pit lane. It's from AB Sportline with Kelvin van der Linde. Traditionally see him in Audis, but of course it's fairly similar. The Lamborghini Huracan, same underpinnings. Here's sharing that with Ferdinand Stuck. That name rings a bell, doesn't it? Of course, as Snowy knows so very well indeed, that Hans-Joachim Stuck, when this race kicked off in 1970, took victory with Clemens Schickenstantz. There we are, a BMW.
Who nobody remembers.
I do, because I remember trying to spell his name. Very tricky indeed.
Have you marked it yet?
Yeah, no, nowhere near. Right, and we've got the first of the GT2 Mercedes, these brand new cars, starting the second group of qualifying on pole position, Michael Grenier. And the second of them, the second of these brand new GT2 Mercedes will start second with Frank Bird. This is Group 2. Then they're sharing with other cars from, we've got Cup 2 Porsches, and the best of those is Michele Di Martino, who's kicking off in car number 184 from third in the second group of cars. And car 184 comes from Kay Kramer Racing, having a really, really strong season. Car 125 is fourth in that second group. That's Huber Motorsport. And the driver at the wheel of that is Kiefer, showing with Verman. And that's Huber Motorsport. Car 161 is fifth in the second group of cars, and that's from another car from Kay Kramer Racing. So they're very well represented. And if you've never watched or listened to any of the long-distance races around the Nürburgring, you do get cars you don't always expect. And it's the mixtures that really entertain, I think, all the fans. There's something for everyone, but the mixture in this second group of cars, you've got cars of GT4 classification, GT2, Cup 2 Porsches, that's the GT3 Cup car. And then you have a whole host of TCR touring cars as well. There's an Opel Astra down towards the tail of that. These are in the production car classes. Hyundai Elantra, Porsche Caymans galore, but a real Catholic mix of cars. Conditions are not improving. I think that's safe to say. The light is very weak indeed, but the cars are coming onto that long drag along the Dottingham back towards Tiergarten and the end of the lap. They're going to Straubenschwanz, and that's a corner. The drivers have done almost the entirety of the Nordschleife, bar that drag, that 3-4 kilometre blast back past the Schloss towards the end of the lap. And so many drivers just make a mistake at Straubenschwanz, and even if they collect it together, their speed is so reduced for the entirety of the straight. It really, in many ways, is the most important corner of the entire circuit. But I think, over the years, some drivers have just relaxed. Oh, it's all right, I've got to the straight. And then the barrier, and then and then the other barrier. So let's hope we have none of that sort of action. But anyhow, fingers crossed. First group of cars getting towards the end of their parade, and the formation lap will be complete. And just to give you a guidance as to the distance between the first group and the rest. First group just coming up to the bridge, it's just on the kink as you approach Tiergarten. The second group not in any sight at all, way back behind. And as mentioned, that second group will be led off by the GT2 Mercedes, brand new, 700 plus horsepower, just what you want in fading light on a wet Nordschleife.
Bring it on.
Or maybe that's just me, I don't know.
It's fun, Bruce, it's fun. Yeah, I'm not convincing you, am I?
No, I think it's immense fun. I'm not entirely sure where to look first. But if you're looking for Mercedes, annoyingly from the front, they're both very dark in hue. The pole starter is almost entirely black, but you have the bright yellow stripes up one side of the bonnet of the Schnitzelaar Mercedes, which will be starting alongside with Colin Carasani at the wheel. And just to reiterate, we've got three of the cars that should be in this lead group, starting from the pit lane. Car number 7, 40, and 72. So it's one of the PHX Audis. And an absolute flyer of a start. That was experienced. Danny Juncadea has got 3 car lengths ahead of the other Mercedes, the Schnitzelarm one, as he heads down to turn 1. No concerns from his point of view. Going to be no spray in his face, but behind him they're 3 abreast, and certainly, I said the Grado car stands out. I think we've had at least 2 places gained by Michael Christensen. Let's call it 3 places. He's of course, the little cut through. You turn into turn 1, but instead of doubling back through the Mercedes arena, you're cutting out the Mercedes arena. So you turn right and then almost immediately left, like a very tight S, and then on down the hill, all the way down towards the Dunlop Chiaro, the hairpin at the bottom. So a few of the drivers caught a little bit napping, but the good news is they've stayed on the track. And for the race leader, Danny Juncker there, he's got, I'd say, already a second's advantage. Second place is still the Schnitzelarm Mercedes, with Colin Carasani at the wheel. Coming down the slope behind him in 3rd position is the fast-starting Michael Christensen. Behind him, looks as though we've got one of the BMWs who's gained ground. The better of the Audis, sorry, the Volker Mesbold Porsches is in 4th place with Martin Ragginger at the wheel. So a few gained and a few lost, but certainly no mistakes from Danny Juncker there.
No, but I would say that he jumped ahead there before the lights went out. Quite a long way. He pulled out a good few car lengths before that went. Whether he was just, he's raced his pole position and he's got the right to control that, so it kind of is everybody else up to keep up with him. Right. It looks like he pulled ahead, but he was just getting up to a speed before when the lights went out. So I would say, bizarrely, the rest of the field were at fault for not keeping up with our pole sitter. Yeah, that's how I'd view it.
Because of the pace coming down to start-finish line, they couldn't overtake Colin Carasani. He was just caught napping a little bit. Now Carasani was 2nd, is 3rd, because Michael Christensen 6th became 4th at the first corner, then it became 3rd going out of the little cut through. Now he's up into 2nd, so he's got to set off after Danny Juncker there. Kim Lewis Schramm is in 6th place, Kuba Gimasiak 7th, Nico Menzel 8th. Matt Campbell, Andy Soucek completing the top 10 cars through the 2 Sabine Schmitz curves into the even darker areas. The best of the Aston Martins running about 15th position. Darren Turner at the wheel, no surprise there. But drivers definitely on their tiptoes. Colin Carasani falling back a little bit, but still comfortable in 3rd place. Best of BMWs has moved up behind, which is Kuba Gimasiak. Of course it is. Of course he's gaining ground. Just to reiterate, 3 of the cars in this top group, the SP9 runners, were making pit lane starts. Car number 7, which is Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini, for misdemeanors in qualifying. Car number 40, which is one of the Scherer PHX Audis, that's entirely crewed by former DTM champions. And car number 72, the BMW Junior Team M4 GT3. Second group of cars, as I said, headed around by the Mercedes GT2, brand new racers, Cup 2 Porsches, some TCR class cars. They're coming through the final sequence of corners onto the start straight. The Cup 2 Porsches very much looking bottled up behind, but these 2 GT2 Mercedes are leading the second starting group. They should unleash as many of their 700 plus horsepower as they dare in the dry, in this wet condition. Tucked in behind the best place, the Cup 2 Porsches is looking as though it's wanting to make a move, waiting until they pass the start-finish line. The GT4 Aston Martin getting very, very close to the pit wall, but eventually ducking back into about 6th position in that group. But as much as anything, Snowy, I think drivers just want to have visibility, so they're steering as wide as they possibly can. And if you just look as the drivers go into turn 1, if they run deep, you think they're going off, and that's because they're actually on the bit of circuit to then snap through an immediate cut through the very tight right into the time left.
Yeah, much tighter bunch across the start line on that start group 2 there, with the GT2 Mercedes at the front of them. One of the Porsches, one of the Cup 2 Porsches, challenging for 2nd place already there, Bruce. But it caught me out again, even on that first group. We're so used to NLS where they go 90 right, or a bit more than 90 right, and left again. Of course, they take a different line, so it looks like an odd approach there. But you say that one of the leading Mercedes there running very good. That's in 2nd place now. That's got it back again, so the 2 Mercedes back as they were on the front row of that starting group 2. Though that's about to change again as the Porsche looks like it's trying to good right and left, coming up to the out of the Dunlop curve there, up into the Michael Schumacher S. Not quite carrying it off, I don't think.
Well, obviously it makes a change if you're a regular watching the Nürburgring Langstrecke series to see the cars go down to the Dunlop hairpin. now. Not everybody's out on the track. They're supposed to be, but number 718 Porsche Cayman is in the pit cars. Looks very beautiful. The Smirlis Racing example, shared by Fabian Peitzmeier and Guido Heinrich, but that, sadly for them, is up on the jacks in the pit garage. And it's so immaculate that it clearly didn't go out to do the formation lap, so it's obviously something they're working on. The second group of cars goes into the compression up the slope to the Vidal chicane, and the GT2 Mercedes that's leading it, the Schnitzelarm example, starting to gallop clear. The best of the, I think it's the K. Kramer 161 Porsche has got up into second place.
It has, hasn't it? Yeah.
In that grouping, so that was a nice, neat, tidy driving from them.
Well, I said he was lining up for it, wasn't he? Coming out of the Dunlop hairpin, and it's he got the job done. He sort of flicked, he did this almost a cutback coming out of the hairpin, which is ready for the Michael Schumacher S, and managed to maintain that position. I think you're right which car it is. I didn't quite see the number on it, but that split the two front row Mercedes from the starting group 2, and of course we'll be on starting group 3. No, that's it. No, we've got 2 groups, haven't we? This one. I'm thinking, I'm going back to NLS days again.
Do you know what happened?
It's only a week ago.
Easy come, easy go. But the important thing there is, I was just looking at the drivers in those GT2 Mercedes, and when you've got Michael Grenier, who's now on sort of Mercedes payroll in your car, you're expected to not only just get clear, but pull increasing, which is exactly what he's doing. The Canadian has been super strong in GT3 class cars over the past handful of years, but certainly his talents have been recognised. He's doing a very good job in tricky conditions, but what he does have, of course, is clear view of the track ahead. Everyone behind him is getting the spray. And as if by magic, the race leaders getting to the carousel. Car 44 carrying a TV camera, and that's 4th in line. That's Martin Ragginger. He's in the best of the Porsches. It's still 2 Mercedes, 1st and 2nd. Danny Juncadella, and no, it isn't, of course. Sorry, we've got Michael Christensen. I was just waiting for their next timing interval to come through. You always get a little bit foxed on the opening lap when they haven't been up to the second timing sector around the long 25-kilometre lap of the circuit. Fans definitely in position out around the circuit, as well as the marshals, and so difficult to pick things out in the spray at the moment. But one person who's having to do that is, we mentioned cars starting from pit exit, car 72, Connor De Filippi, American racer, huge amount of experience. He had to start from the back of the pack, and he's got a whole 1, 2, 3, 4 cars right in front of him. But at the moment he's trying to probe left and right behind one of the Porsches that are sliding a little bit wide to go through Brunchen. He's got the pace to pass, but he hasn't got the place to pass. I think that could be a slogan, couldn't it, or something like that for the Nürburgring. Anyhow, wherever he thinks there's half a gap, because the Porsche in front of him is trying to overtake one of the BMWs, gets up alongside the Walkenhorst car, slides through, so nearly goes into the side of it, but well done the driver of the
I think there was a tiny bit of contact there.
Well, Henry Walkenhorst, it was his car. He didn't really want it to be touched, but very busy through Flansgard. They go, Connor De Filippi, sure's got to be careful. He knows this circuit. He's got the pace in the car. That BMW beneath him, very, very strong. But he's got to be sure that Henry Walkenhorst, who's running in SP9, but he's in the SP9 Pro-Am class, has seen where he is. But in Henry's situation, he's now looking at the 3 cars ahead of him, trying to hang on to them.
You know, Bruce, it's a bit early. We're 9 minutes into this whole race and the whole weekend. But it's irrespective of what drivers are paid. When you see that kind of work, that's where they earn their money. In that traffic, those conditions, sitting behind there, that close to people, slingshotting, roller coasting there, down through the Stefan Beloff S, and that's where drivers earn their money, and just hats off to them. It's an absolute pleasure to watch and talk about.
Indeed. Now, race start. We queried whether Danny Juncadella had jumped the gun. You did. I thought it was fine. I just thought Colin Carasani hadn't reacted, but the start is under investigation. However, as he streaks ever further clear, coming up towards Tiergarten right now, he's finished the Dottinger. That is standard procedure. They always recheck a race start. I didn't necessarily see anything untoward. I was a little bit surprised that the car that was alongside him, the Schnitzelarm Mercedes, didn't get going when they pulled onto the start from the straight. Obviously wasn't allowed to overtake the pole man before the start line, but as Juncadella crosses the start-finish line, the long shot shows no other driver in sight. He's coming down, he's on the brakes, headlights come into view in the background, yet to finish that opening lap. And what will the gap be? I think you're looking at probably about 8 seconds waiting for that to be proved, and 11.4 seconds.
Yeah, well, that's
back to second place, and it's Michael Christensen who gained 4 places. Good job from the Great Dane. And still Colin Karasani holds 3rd place down into turn 1.
I mean, that 11-second gap there, Bruce, that's the result of a stellar opening lap from Danny Juncadella. That's got nothing to do with getting a good start. He may have done it, he may not. It's under investigation. As you say, that's standard procedure. There will be something in the regulations to say what time, what speed he got across the line at, etc. But personally, if I was a race steward now looking at this, I'd just say, well, okay, give him a 10-second penalty. He's still a second ahead. He's driven the lap, and it's anything but just skill.
I don't like interrupting, but I have to. I just cannot contain myself any further, because Kelvin van der Linde is really scorching up the order. He was outside the top 10. I think the AB Sportsline Lamborghini started back in about 14th position. He's just moved up into 5th, just gone past Cooper Gamasiak. So that is a driver on his toes. Not everybody is happy with life on their tyres on the opening lap, because the Shearer Sport PHX crew in the pit lane with the tyre lined up, waiting to play. Now, I just want to have a quick look how far up the order Conor de Philippe got. Did well. Started at the back of the pack. He's got up to 11th place, and the number 5 Audi.
Well, that's the one we're having the tyre change, but it's. I'm just trying to work out why.
Well, Vincent Colby started 3rd, but what can we see that is untoward?
That's what I can't say. No, because they've changed all 4. Or have they changed the left-hand side, or they just? I can't see why they've done that. It looks like they've changed the left side only. That's because I haven't seen them change the right-hand side. It might have been obscured by our camera view, but it's a strange thing to come in so early. No way did he start on slicks.
No.
And it's certainly a set of treading tyres that come off it.
If he'd started on slicks, he wouldn't have made it back to the pits yet.
No.
So, right. So the number 5 Audi underway it is.
Obscure one, that, Bruce. We'll come back on that.
Well, we've got people looking for things in the pits, but who else has made great gains? We've talked about Matt Campbell moving up the order, car number 24. That's up into 4th place overall, but that's under pressure. That's the line speed by Car Collection Porsche that he's sharing with Mathieu Jaminet, Patrick Pilet and Patrick Kolb. So they're going to be putting probably not all of those drivers in a 2-hour race. I think they'll only use 2 tonight, but maybe all 4 of them tomorrow. And again, there's a lot of horse trading with the entry, not just for this weekend, but for the Nürburgring 24-hour itself. So just to reiterate, race leader Danny Juncadella, car number 2, started on pole position. The Team Get Speed Mercedes across the start-finish line with 1 flying lap, 11.5 seconds clear of Michael Christensen in the Manthey Porsche. 11.5 seconds. That's not bad by anybody's book. We've had many races 4 hours long that have been won by margins of a fraction of that scale. So let's see how it unfolds. But I must say, looking out around the circuit, it started on a wet track. The drivers still getting a lot of spray from the cars ahead of them. Is it raining a tiny little bit? Can't really tell. The light is very, very weak indeed. It's a grey evening. It's a dank evening in the Eiffel Forest. Not a lot of warmth to be had. I sense, though, bit by bit, this track may just start to find a dry line, but it's not going to be anytime soon.
I would concur with that, Bruce. It's not going to be any time soon, and if at all, this race, to be honest, maybe the last half hour, the last quarter of the race. But I think that's an outside chance moment. I wouldn't even bet your money on it. That's how uncertain I am.
Right, so just hearing, thank you very much, Lucas, through down there. Drying wet didn't work, said Ernst Moser, the team boss of Shearer Sport PHX, and boss of Phoenix Racing. But so they changed to full wets. So Vincent Kolb started 3rd on the grid, inside of the 2nd row. Took a gamble. This is a team that's not short of experience. Phoenix, in particular, have been super strong in all races on the ring.
So what we used to call an intermediate.
25, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dry wets, yeah.
So they took a gamble.
Did well to get it back then.
They really, really did. And just looking down the order, Cup 2, by the way, well, it's not a surprise, Michele Di Martino, look down the lineup in that class. He is leading that, but he's now got ahead of Schnitzelam Racing's Michael Grenier, who'd run very strongly, but right now, light is really fading very quickly indeed. TCR class is being led by Manuel Lauk in one of the Hyundais. And SP10, that's GT4 class cars, Josh Burton Australian racer, long-time racer with the KCMG team now, the team from Hong Kong. Fierce supporters of all things at Nürburgring. He's sharing with Edoardo Liberati, the Italian, but he's got their Toyota Supra leading GT4 in 26th place overall. Just having a quick look to see if anybody has had any misdemeanors that haven't been picked up. And let's face it, with 170 odd corners, it's just as easy to miss them as it is to catch them. But front-running cars going very nicely indeed. Right, 11.477 seconds between first and second. Look, waiting for the next timing interval. It is a long time in coming. And we will see. Actually, just going back to that decision to run on inters at the start of this race, that was very, very ballsy. And it does seem they were the only ones who tried that, Shearer Sport PHX. And Ernst Moser, with a shrug of his shoulders, the team box, obviously thought it was worth a go, though. But you have to bank on that level of experience. And the teammate there, Frank Stippler, who's been racing here for 25, 30 years, they've got experience of looking at cloud shape, level of light, and they took a punt. It didn't work, but let's see what happens tomorrow. But certainly the number 5 Audi that started at the head of the pack, well, in 3rd place, right down towards the tail.
Now, we were predicting earlier, weren't we, Bruce, about lap times? We're saying 8 minutes is the magic number around here in the dry. 9:31 is the lap time set by race leader Danny Yankidella. So we're a good minute and a half off at the moment. And I said it probably wasn't being much under a 10-minute lap. So we'll watch how that drops down. But just saying that, Danny Yankidella at 9:31. Christensen second, 9:42, 45, 46, 47, 47. You're getting the picture here of what they're like. That is what an absolutely stellar lap in that literally opening lap from Danny Yankidella in that Mercedes. Quite extraordinary.
Yeah, he's left the iron on, hasn't he?
Exactly, yes.
Right, just having a quick translation of what Ernst Moser was saying. He said the inters this is on the number 5 Audi, didn't get to work properly. We're now going to put full wets on. We've said that much so far, but he said the result in this event isn't so important to us. It's more important to grab insights. Of course it is. This is just a qualifying race, and it's just helping towards grid position. But in many ways, if you're the team boss, you have no idea what the weather's going to be, well, in the Eifel Mountains tomorrow, let alone in a month's time. So
never mind the next corner.
Yeah. So
that's one that matters.
Damp conditions. Have a roll of the dice. See how your car handles. See what it's like on those inters. Would it be something they could use in the 24 hours itself? But certainly it's all about gathering data and also being able to harness that data that you've just gleaned.
Yes.
But right now, Danny Yankidella just running off and hiding. Quite easy to do in the dark, in a black Mercedes, going between the dark trees. He's now riding through the carousel.
Just a quick update on the ticker on penalties we mentioned just before the race, Bruce. I think the number 7... Jeffries Berman Swift Lamborghini, it may have had that 2-minute penalty added now.
Okay,
I think it has.
That makes sense.
And the 100 Valkenhorst BMW Breuer and Trogan has had a penalty added, or it's facing a penalty, hasn't been applied yet, for not standing on all 4 wheels at the 3-minute marker, i.e., as we saw them in that echelon pattern, on their air jacks, they drop them down. There's a very set procedure for safety for all the personnel and crew involved to make sure they're out of the way. And if it's not there at the right time, then unfortunately it's got one hanging over it. Unfortunately, number 100.
It does. But maybe a team boss would go, yeah, well, that's experience, and we'd rather you did it now than you did it come the 24 hours itself.
You just don't do it again.
Obviously, don't do it again, and you may have some financial fine into the team kitty. I believe in all of that. That makes a lot of sense. Right, another
beer
lap.
tokens, you mean?
I wasn't going to, put a value on them, but right, another lap completed. Second lap from Danny Yankidella. He was just under 11.5 seconds clear at the end of lap 1. He's now braking heavily. Still can't see the lights approaching of what will presumably be Michael Christensen in second place. He's turned through the first part of turn 1, but it's such a different line. You have to almost immediately, having turned hard right through about 120 degrees, flick left through the... Luckily, they've moved a concrete wall panel so you can go through. What's the gap? 19 seconds now. He gained another 7.5 seconds over Michael Christensen in the best of the Porsches in second place. And he in turn has got 4 seconds over Colin Carasani in the Schnitzelarm Mercedes that started from the outside of row 1. car 24 comes through next. That's Matt Campbell. So it's a case of Mercedes, Porsche, and Matt driving for Lion Speed by Car Collection. Best of the rest behind that. I said he was going super well. Kelvin van der Linde, the number 27 AB Sportsline Lamborghini, in 5th place overall, who just moved ahead of Kuba Gimnasiak at the start of the lap. And then Dennis Fetzer following up. That's car number 25, which is the Huber Motorsport Porsche. And top 8 completed by Nico Menzel, who lost a position to Fetzer there. Menzel falling back. In the best of the Falcon Motorsports Porsches, there, Falcon, they are running their 33 car, which is slightly further down the grid than the 44, but the 33 in Nico Menzel's hand is 4 places up over the 12th position, held by Martin Ragginger. Positions keep chopping and changing. Again, it's just trying to identify if we've got a slightly drier line starting to appear, but the answer, even though it's hard to pick out in the gloom of an evening, I think the answer is no, really.
I don't think so yet. I think the next lap is going to be the one that's going to give us our reference, if you like, our data on that one, because the first lap was 10 seconds quicker for Danny Juncadella. Of course, it was a rolling start. It's going to be a little bit quicker, though, a full 10 seconds. We'll see. At the end of this lap, we'll get a much more representative idea what the lap times are. I don't think it's going to be much more than a 21, no. Much less than a 21, put it that way.
I know what you mean.
Another penalty over hanging over the 25 Huber Motorsport Porsche. That also for not being on its wheels at the 3-minute mark. And of course that 718 Cayman that you spotted absolutely pristine in the pits as if it were entering a Concours event has now joined the race. It's obviously had repairs before it even got started. But it's a 2-hour race, and it's all part of the build-up to the 24 hours, so it's data collection. You get out there, great conditions, and this, part of this is qualifying for the races. Yes, it's 2 hours, it's half an NLS race. We've got a full one tomorrow, as it were, NLS time normally, but it's the perfect time to go and get some data for your drivers, because it's wet and dark.
Right, and we very nearly had one of the BMWs in the barriers there. Tail came out just after Hatzenbach.
Turn the TC up then.
I think it was Andy Soucek who got him sideways. He's running 11th, and right behind was Martin Ragginger. That would tally. And just in front of him was Conor De Filippi. Now, of the cars that started from the back, well, from pit exit, BMW Junior Team car has got up to 10th place with Conor De Filippi. The number 40 Audi from Team Shearer PHX, that's the DTM champion car, Mike Rockenfeller, and is up to 13th. 1 place ahead of Axel Jeffries, who started the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini from pit lane as well. So they have got up to 10th, 13th and 14th respectively. The start was a thing of great interest. We're still waiting for any further notification whether the fast starting Danny Juncadella from pole position has picked up any penalty or not. I'm still waiting for any official analysis, but I still think it was clear. But since then, gaining almost 10 seconds on each of those two first and second laps, Danny Juncadella clear. No spray in his face just yet, but he will soon be getting up towards the tail of the second group of starting cars. Just in case you want to know how many cars started the race, I will keep scrolling down my screen. More than 60. My screen's frozen for a second. I'll try my other screen.
60.
60 cars it is, that's why it stopped there. Running last is the Smurlis Racing 718 Porsche Cayman. We know that, we saw it in the garage. Now, the driver who's going best in this race is Danny Juncadella. The driver who's going second best is 9 places further back. His name is Conor De Filippi, and we're just hearing from his team boss, Stefan Reinhold, who's done a fantastic job with BMW Junior Team drivers, and they are staunch supporters of all racing on the Nürburgring. So, you know what? For his driver as well, for Conor De Filippi, who needs no further learning on the Nordschleife rather than the extra gain you get on every out.
You can never stop learning.
Outing here is that he practiced the overtaking bit on the opening lap when the cars were nose to tail, and he picked his way up very nicely, and continues to do so. And I think just trying to see who the next target will be. I reckon that his rate of gain, the next target's probably going to be the Fricadelli Ferrari. Yes, David Pittard is just about a second or two ahead of him, so it's 9th for the Ferrari and 10th for that BMW. But of course, the leading BMW, the best placed BMW, is 4 places further up the track. It's 6th overall. That's Kuba Gimnasiak. can do sense. It might also just be the angle at which the direction in which the cars are approaching. The next sequence of corners is a little bit less dark now. We'll keep an eye on track times, but the track seems to have a little less glisten on it now. But it's easy for us to comment on from the warmth of a dry commentary room.
Just trying to look where our 296 Ferrari, Fricadelli Ferrari was that we mentioned earlier in going to the grid, where that is in the field now. Just a bit of on board there with it with the
Fricadelli. It's ninth place.
It is ninth.
Ninth place, so it's just ahead of the fast rising Conor De Filippi. Right. And by the way, if you are looking for the regular BMW Junior drivers of Harper, Hess and Verhagen, they're not here. Sorry to break that to you. They're down competing in the GT World Challenge at Monza this weekend. But BMW have always had a good rotation of drivers. And a little point that was just made there by Stefan Reinhold, boss of BMW Junior team, was that by starting from the pits, they're carrying one more lap of fuel than their rivals, which could work to their advantage when they try to time what should be just the one pit stop in this race. What's happening out front? Well, I tell you what, nobody has overtaken our race leader. He's still the race leader, has been since the lights turned green. Danny Juncadea, 11.5 seconds clear at the end of the opening lap, 19 seconds clear at the end of lap 2. And just knocking off the sectors. Time for a few pit visits, and that's not normally what you want with the bonnet up. The 114 Subaru is in the pit lane. That's Subaru Technica International with Tim Schrick, Hideki Yamauchi and Takuto Iguchi. Mechanics with head torches on, looking under the bonnet, but not moving at that great pace of a slick pit stop when all is right. Driver on board is Tim Schrick at the moment from Vipper Foyth, just waiting in that Subaru WRX. But unfortunately for them, the laptop is being connected, so clearly some little glitch of some sort. They want to check all the telemetry for that.
Definitely is a reboot, isn't it? Plug the laptop in.
A reboot and new tyres.
Yeah.
Yes,
you see what I did there? Yeah.
I do, yes. Yes. So
okay, it was weak, I know.
No, we'll go for that. It's the first quarter of the race. That's absolutely fine. Car looks relatively standard. It's running in the SP4T class, so it's not quite as standard as you find on the road, but actually, considering it's done 2 laps of the race, it's looking really remarkably clean. I thought the front would be just filthy, but I suppose it's just rain they're getting thrown back at them at this stage in the race. They're not getting too much muck from tyre debris and brake dust. Again, just waiting for the lap to be completed through the Kleiner Carousel. Go our front runners, getting down towards the sequence that takes them to Schraubenschwanz, and then they get unleashed, balancing the power, delivering the power, accelerating out along the Dottinger Höhe. I always feel so much respect for the TV camera crews. They try and pick out who is who and what is what when they had a long shot back down the Dottinger Höhe, but I can be sure that the first car through, as the Subaru just about comes to pit exit to rejoin the race, just waiting for Danny Juncadea to come through and see what a time he can manage. The best lap he's managed in this race so far when pulling clear was 9 minutes 21 seconds. He's just done 9 minutes 30, so 9 seconds slower on that lap. Have conditions worsened? Did he come across traffic? Because he's certainly already lapping those that started at the tail of the second group. Oh good, the Subaru is not just out of the pits, but it's back up running. I really thought track conditions looked as though they were drying. Right, so Michael Christensen, however, did his best lap of the race, and so the gap's come down from 19 seconds to 14.5. What occurred for Danny Juncadea? Was it simply traffic in the wrong places and he wasn't prepared to take risks? But 4.5 seconds out of his lead, it's not insurmountable, but if that happens every lap, give him 4 more laps and he won't be leading this race. Up and down the pit lane, the crew's constantly looking out to see if they can see any change in the weather. Oh dear, Klostertal has one of the GT2s.
One of the GT2 cars, yes.
GT2 Mercedes, and
I think it's the number 46 car.
Yeah, I don't think it's the 222, the Michael Grenier car.
I think it's the 46. I think it's the Thomas Jaeger, Frank Bird, Ella Earhart 46 entry.
Yeah, that was started by Frank Bird, young British driver from the Northwest. That was the silver and blue one from Team HRT, but the one that went off like a scalded cat was the one that's leading the class. And Michael Grenier, 22nd position overall.
It is still moving though, Bruce. It's on its way still. So it's had a little moment. Potential code brown, and carried on.
As you were. The Nürburgring Nordschleife, difficult in bright, dry conditions. Doubly difficult when the light fades. Trebly difficult when it rains, or when it's fading light and wet. Michael Christensen had such a strong opening lap, but he's now got more company because Colin Carissani has fallen backwards down to 5th place in the Switzerland Mercedes, and up into 3rd has come the number 24 Mercedes of Matt Campbell. That's the Lion Speed by Car Collection 1, and up into 4th now is Kelvin van der Linde, who's been super competitive, but the person who's under pressure is Michael Christensen in 2nd place, because he's now less than a second as they turn through the hats and backs, clear of the chasing Matt Campbell.
Yeah, and you mentioned those lap times there, Bruce, that it was a 9:21 was the fastest lap of the race for Juncadella. That was the first flying lap of the race. He did a 31 from the rolling start, as it were, 10 seconds quicker. He then went to a 9:30, so he dropped 9 seconds on that on its first proper flying lap, whereas Christensen did a 25. And everybody else behind seems to do the same. So Campbell in 3rd position, number 24 is a 21. 24, van der Linde, Cesarani a 30. And Fetzer at 9:27. So interesting mixtures at the top there. Mercedes, Porsche, Lamborghini, Mercedes, Porsche at the moment. We mentioned BMW as being the strongest car of the season so far. Well, that's down to Kuba Maziak in 7th overall in the Volkenhorst 101 entry. His best lap has been a 9:33.
I'll tell you who's not lapping very fast at the moment, and it's unfortunately for Darren Turner. It's Darren Turner, the number 69 Aston Martin, being pushed back into the pit garage. That's entered by Durr Motorsport. It's dark green metallic. That rings from Aston Martin with broad white stripes up over the bonnet. But in this, any team that has a problem, it's better to come into the pits, get it sorted. We've got another qualifying race tomorrow. Darren Turner will be gleaning experience for the team about the Vantage. It looks like he's just popping the steering wheel.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, belts out.
To climb out of the car. Not to say it won't be out again later. It's a 2-hour race, but obviously we've got, in fact, very nearly just over 3/4 of the race remaining. There's a fantastic scrap out on track between a pair of BMWs, though, and Kuba Gimnaziak is moving all over the place. He's in 7th place overall, but Conor De Filippi, at the start of this, the 4th lap, has just moved ahead of David Pittard in the Fricadelli Racing Ferrari, and really fancies getting his yellow, black and red BMW past the black and red version from Walkenhorst, and Gimnaziak's determined not to make that happen. There's a Porsche Cayman up ahead. They both passed it, but it meant that Gimnaziak had to really haul his car from one side of the track to the other, not taking too many risks, but clearly the pace in BMW terms is in the hands of De Filippi at the moment. That started from pit out after the group went through. He's now up to 9th. I think he's now up to 8th. He's gone past Pittard in the Ferrari, and he's looking very keen to get 7th place into its hands. Gosh, the penalties are coming thick and fast. You feel in race control there were so many misdemeanors on the grid, largely with speeding in the pit lane, or particularly now cars that didn't get back down onto the deck with all 4 wheels when the 3-minute board was shown, because still the penalties are coming in. 30-second time penalty for Fetzer, Kern and Dumas. At the moment, Fetzer is in 9th place overall, so that's a little bit of a setback for number 25 Huber Motorsport Porsche. He's showing that with Lars Kern and Romain Dumas. Yeah, the Romain Dumas.
Well, I'm going to do I've asked Darren Turner what's happened to the Aston. See if he responds. No pressure.
No, entirely so.
Yeah.
We are watching,
Your public need to know, Darren. Come on, tell us.
Well, I tell you what, there's an interview coming up very soon with Darren Turner. So as much as you're asking, he can't answer your question because he's going to be coming on live to tell us what's happening. So we'll listen to him. We drop the volume for those in the German language and try and translate them as quickly as we can and as accurately as we can. But Darren has mastered English, and we'll hear what he has to say.
Ja, gerade frisch aus dem Auto ausgestiegen. Das Auto ist schon aufgebockt, steht hier in der Box. Darren, what's happening in the car? Why is it inside the box?
Yes, we had a vibration in the qualifying session earlier on. I thought we found a solution, but we need to look again just to check because it's getting worse and worse. As the run went on, so now it's like, let's just make sure everything's okay with the car, and then we'll be in a better shape for the race as well.
So you will not go outside now on the race again? Just have to race tomorrow?
No, I hope we go back out. Yeah, I hope we go back out. I mean, just get the guys to go through everything, make sure that we find it, fix it, and then go again.
So what do you think is vibration? Do you know something?
I know the vibration. I can feel the vibration, but I don't know where it's coming from. So it's still a new team at this stage. As the team gets in the car, let's just go one step, make sure everything's okay, and then we should be in a good position for tomorrow, and more importantly when we come back for the 24-hour.
Yeah, we also. Thank you very much.
That was the ever-charming Darren Turner with Emily Miller. You can see why crews want Darren in their team, can't you? He's quick, he's such a personable person, and he doesn't have some great emotional highs and lows. He's just Darren. He's there, he does the job, and he does it brilliantly.
Quick, calm, concise and consistent. Perfect endurance driver.
Yes, exactly. No prima donnas welcome here. And, Darren's track record is quite extraordinary. If you look at the long, illustrious careers of drivers who started in Formula first, most of them didn't have long, illustrious careers from that little single-seater Formula in the late 80s. But Darren grabbed his opportunity, became the McLaren Autosport young driver back early in the scheme, and clearly has just made a fantastic career out of it. And the Nürburgring is one of his favourite hunting grounds. But again, it's not a case of park the car in the garage. It's get it back out and try to identify a vibration. Not the easiest thing, particularly when you're turning left and right, up over hill, down dale, around the Nordschleife.
Exactly so, and as a result of that BRDC McLaren Autosport Young Driver Award, as it was in those days, he was one of the earliest exponents of simulator racing and grown a great company, Base Performance Simulators, providing that around the world now. We now take it as almost, even in the last 2, 3, 5 years, we just talk about it as normal. Darren was doing this back in the late 90s and developing it, and it was way ahead of the time, if you like. And that's again one of the reasons why somebody of his stature and experience is so valued, because he can get in. One of the things he does is, last year you might have heard it in Formula One, the safety car is shared between Mercedes and Aston Martin. Now the same engines, etc., but a lot of the F1 drivers are complaining that when it was the Aston DBX, it was considerably slower than the Mercedes. What did they go? They got Darren Turner on board to sort it. And I was talking about this only last week. And he said, yes, you've got to remember though, the Mercedes they started with was a far higher performance car than the DBX in the first place. So it's a little harsh criticism. But who's the man that developed it? Darren Turner. So all those years of simulator racing, developing your own business, driving Aston Martin, 3 class wins for Aston Martin at Le Mans, and you're developing the safety car. It's an awful job. I really feel for him.
He's on his feet, not on his uppers. He's done a fantastic job. So anyhow, they're trying to sort that out now. That was a
penalty update. It sounds like it's match of the day here, doesn't it? Number 25, which was our Huber Motorsport car that had that has its penalty, a 30-second penalty added to it, as indeed has the Valkenhorst BMW number 100. That entry, that's the unfortunately Henry Valkenhorst Jörg Brewer one. Of the 3 cars, 100, 101 and 100, 1 and 2, my apologies. Those two have got 30-second penalties, which are to be served at the pit stop, not added at the end of the race, which makes it more real time, because then it happens in the race, we know where we stand. They're not going then, plus a bit, adding up, and us mathematicians, it's no problem to. The rest of us, we struggle. Yeah,
it's just one of those things.
Keep up, Jones. Keep up, Jones.
Now what? I was ahead, I'm sure. Right, the pace. Slightly back in Juncker.
No, sorry, just very quickly. Sorry, on that exact note, 30-second time penalty added to 002 for jump start.
Okay, so that's our race leader, Danny Juncker. So instead of being 15.3 seconds clear, he's 14.65 seconds behind Michael Christensen. So the 911 Porsche, 15 and a bit seconds back on the circuit, but effectively leading. There's a fantastic scrap between fighting over just outside the top 10. Nico Menzel in one of the two Falco Motorsport Porsches has got Kim Lewis Schramm all over him in the number 16 Audi, plus who else is in the spray down there, just trying to pick them out. And we've got the Conrad Motorsports Axel Jeffries driven Lamborghini. So Porsche, Audi, Lamborghini. By the next corner it's Porsche, Lamborghini, Audi as the order changes, and Axel Jeffries out almost over the curb. You don't want to be doing that, those curbs are wet. But such is the level of competition. And Andy Soucek is a little bit further back down. But this little battle may enable Soucek to start closing in again. He's in number 102, which is one of the 3 Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW M4 GT3s. But for Nico Menzel, having to work very hard indeed to keep now the number 7 Lamborghini behind him. Axel Jeffries all over the tail as he goes through the first and the second of the Sabine Schmitz curbs. If there's any little bit of a slip-up, as Soucek has, in the space of the Grand Prix loop they went on, Andy Soucek's found about 4 seconds on this trio ahead. I thought they were tripping each other up, but the Spaniard is closing in his Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW. And then would be a classical view, racing these SP9 class cars. We will have such a jumble. We'll have a Porsche, a Lamborghini, an Audi, and a BMW. All we need of the regular front runners is to have a Mercedes in that group as well.
And just going back to your comments a few minutes ago, Bruce, in terms of the track drying out, the Conrad Lamborghini having a twitch, just coming to the final part of the Hatzenbach before they go down to the longest straight over the bridge there. The track, certainly on the GP circuit, very much drying out, virtually dry, but not quite yet on Hatzenbach. And this is what we're saying about how the nature of this circuit. It's multi-layers. GP circuit looks great. Hatzenbach still greasy, a little bit dry.
Yeah, no, it really is very, very tricky indeed. Tim Schrick, we saw him sitting aboard that Subaru WRX in the pit lane. His car is back out, but he is not at the wheel. One of his 2 Japanese teammates has taken that over. But Tim, full of enthusiasm for what was out there, but the enthusiasm you can have when you've handed your car over in tricky conditions for someone else to have a go. Just trying to see how far down the order. And it's Hideto Yamauchi at the wheel, down in 45th position of the 60 runners. But it's most important, Tim has loads of experience with the Nordschleife to get his 2 teammates out there in these tricky conditions, which they may well face come the 24 hours. And just reiterating while he's finishing off his interview, that was the driver of 114, of course, Tim Schrick. Is Danny Juncadella leading at the start of this lap, which is lap number 5, by just over 15 seconds, but with a 30-second penalty hanging over them. So keep an eye on that. For a lot of these teams, they're thinking, it's one thing doing it in a qualifying race and getting a penalty for a minor misdemeanor, but you just don't want to be doing that in the 24 hours at the end of June, which of course we'll be covering in full on Radio Show Limited. Looking very much forward to that. It's going to come up in the blink of an eye.
I don't know what you're doing at the end of June, but I'm going at the end of May.
I'm going for the reruns. Did I say June? Good Lord. Last of the party. Who's on pole? Who was on pole? Right, okay. But again, just to reiterate, so many different classes of cars competing in this. We've got BMW M240i's, we've got production class cars, we've got Cup 2 Porsches, SP10, which is effectively GT4 runners, SPX, which is the special class. There's sort of effectively
non-homologated cars, basically.
Yeah,
non-homologated SP9s, really.
And by next year, they will have to be pinned into one of the classes.
Yeah.
Themselves. So just waiting for the end of lap number 5. I don't expect anyone to dive into the pits just yet, because though the track appears to be getting a little bit drier, the best lap of the race is still a 9 minutes 21. The best time in qualifying was an 8 minutes 13, so elbow space. And as I say that, of course, we get someone calling into the pits. But is that for a penalty to be served? I think there's every chance it could be.
Is that the Schnitzel-Alarm?
It's one of the Schnitzel-Alarm cars in the race, but it's not Colin Carasani's car. Still waiting, because we're still waiting for the race leader to come through. No, it's GT4. It's treble 2. It looks like a drive-through penalty by the looks of things, but wait to see if he does slow down at pit exit.
Nope.
That's,
pit box right at the end.
That's the car that was leading. It's the better of the two brand new GT2 Mercedes. 700 horsepower, more power than the SP9 class cars.
Yeah, because in pit box 28 right down at the end. Yeah, that's why.
Right at pit exit, it's always a moment where you think, has the camera crew picked it up at the right point? Have they just come out? But
worst case scenario is the driver missed his box.
yes, going to the one he used to.
It's embarrassing here, but at least here you can go and do the GP circuit and come back round again.
So, of course, we're just waiting to see what happens when the penalty or how the penalty is served by the number 2 Get Speed Mercedes that Danny Juncadella started from pole position. The 30-second penalty is pending. The how, the when, the where, we will let you know as it happens. And around the Nordschleife, bit by bit, and not in a uniform way, the track is looking a little bit drier on the racing line. We had 60 cars on it. Of course, if we had, you know, the fullest grid we could have 3 times that number, which of course would be drying the track out rather faster than the 60 or so that are still circulating with an hour and a quarter remaining in this race. Yes, both of the 2 GT2 Mercedes in the pit lane. The number 46 had a little moment out at Klostertal. It was all collected again and brought back. Frank Bird walks away from that.
Yeah, we'll just treated to a few moments of Daniel Juncadella on board the number 2 Get Speed Mercedes there. That's the leading car with that time penalty to serve yet. We've yet to see how that's going to be served. But we treated a little bit of on-board footage there coming through Flansgarden. And you could hear, Bruce, that he wasn't being as tentative with the throttle as he had to be the previous couple of laps. You can see it was nice, you could hear it was nice and consistent. It was a lot of throttle going on. So the track must have confidence underneath him in that car and enough grip now. So that would suggest the track is starting to dry out.
I think so, Snowy, and of course it's getting harder to tell because the light is beginning to fade. Right, news of that treble 2 Schnitzelarm Racing Mercedes, brand new race global debut here this weekend, and pushed back into the pit garage. This is turning into a test session for them. And Michael Grenier got out of that, and also we had the HTP, sorry we didn't, the HRT Mercedes GT2. There's the other car, these brand new races coming in, and Frank Bird climbing out of that one.
What's happened with the car and how was your first stint?
Yeah, it was okay. First time with the GT2 here, first time in the wet as well with this car. It was going quite well, but I think the alternator belt broke. So we had a low voltage, that's why we stopped 1 lap earlier than planned. And I think they have to change it now, put a new one, so we will lose a lot of time, but still a good preparation for the 24.
So you're just looking for the 24-hour race, so now this is just a little test?
Yeah, I mean, we are trying some setup thing because it's the first time for the team with the car here, trying some stuff with the tires as well. Shame about the belt, but it's better that things happen now than in 2 weeks.
Tell us something about the feeling of the car. How does it feel? How does it drive?
Well, I think it's for sure one of the best GT2 on the grid. First of all, because the power is amazing. The engine is very fun to drive. It's also kind of based on the same chassis than the GT3, so it's a very good chassis. Obviously, there's less downforce, but it's a super nice car to drive.
And is it a special thing for you to drive now the car? It's a world premiere now here in this race, also in Monza, but here on the Nürburgring now. Is it special for you?
Yeah, of course. We decided with the MG quite soon. We made the decision that I would need a GT2. First of all, it was my first year on March. I think it's a lot of people will sit on the track. It's super nice car. I think people will like it.
Yeah, we also like it to see. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Emily Miller there with Michael Grenier, and that's a key to a GT2 car. It's got to be something that's nice to drive because it's a car that will be in the hands of gentlemen drivers.
100%. Hearing him describe that there, that was music to a driver's ears there for me, was when he described it as it's based on the GT3 chassis. I'm like, ooh, take already existing quicker one and slightly detune it, not start with a new car. I'm like, so really, it's a slightly slower GT3 car. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, with probably more generous power delivery and just a little bit kinder. So that also explains with the alternator belt problem that Michael was explaining why the other GT2 Mercedes came into the pits about 10 seconds behind it, because that had the spin out or whatever happened at Klostertal. Couldn't work out why it was so close. So clearly Michael had been backing it off to get it back to the pits. Of course they'll repair it and get as much track time as they can in the remainder of this race. 1 hour and 10 minutes remaining. Now, what's happening at the front? The gap is coming down. New fastest lap of the race to the driver in second place, Michael Christensen in the Manthey Porsche, down to 12 seconds behind now. But he's only half a second clear of Matt Campbell. So it's Mercedes, Porsche at the front end of the field. And Matt driving the red and white line speed by Car Collection 911 GT3R. And certainly keeping Michael Christensen very honest. But they've stayed, well, they took 3.5 seconds off Danny Juncker there. So Danny had been pressing on, but he's also got that 30-second penalty coming his way. The race leader in the number 2 Get Speed Mercedes.
Now, I think under the rules, I think they have to serve that 30-second penalty at the next pit stop. Anytime you're forced to come in, of course, is a drive-through when you have to do it. But rather than do it at the end, I don't think it's optional to say, let's see how we can get on and have it taken off at the end. I think you have to serve it now, if I'm correct.
You know what? I'm much more a fan of that approach than the...
Yeah, it's real time. It's real time.
Yeah,
you know what's going on. Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I think people are still talking about what happened when Ferrari were very clever on their feet at the British Grand Prix one year with Michael Schumacher serving the drive-through penalty after the checkered flag had fallen, and I'd already been up on the pit wall and seen, when I was working for Formula 1 TV, you could almost hear the pitter-patter of feet of team lawyers running up and down the paddock trying to work it out, with the wise owl of Ross Brawn looking implacable. He's sort of on top of the situation. This is what we'll do, lads. And
exactly.
They kept the win.
All's fair in love, war and racing.
Working out your margins. This is a business enterprise approach. Now, looking down through the classes, Cup 2 is still being led by Michele Di Martino, 20th place overall for K. Kramer Racing. Next in line is Kiefer from Huber Motorsport. It's car number 125. You expect them to be at the front end of that grouping, but certainly Michele Di Martino has been very, very strong indeed. 125 is Huber Motorsport's Cup 2 class. TCR is being read by Manuel Lauk in Hyundai. That's car number 830. BMW, let's go down a little bit further to find the car that's leading, BMW M240i. Reinhold Meixner, that's down in 38th position, but I've skipped past a couple of classes. SP10, we mentioned it earlier, it's still the Toyota Supra from KCMG with Josh Burden aboard. And SP8T. Now, Door Motorsport, one of the Aston Martins, is not in the garage. We've heard from Darren Turner in the SP9 Class 1, but Theo Nue is leading the SP8T class in his Vantage by a small margin ahead of the Gitti Motorsport BMW M4 GT3, which we saw on its outlap. Caught it in the fading light since then, but Theo Nue, French racer, does a lot of racing in Aston Martins. He's waving the flag in that class, 32nd position overall. Clock is ticking towards almost the halfway point in this 2-hour race. We've got double the fun tomorrow. We have a 4-hour race, and we also have the top qualifying, one at a time qualifying shootout, where the driver can blame no one but themselves, but equally they can give themselves the ultimate accolade of delivering when the others couldn't quite match their pace. So real spotlight on the driver's time for them tomorrow. So that comes a local time at 10:30 in the morning, which is 9:30 in the UK. Work it out to where you are. We're on British Summer Time now. And then at 1 o'clock Eiffel time is the start of the 4-hour race. But right now we're getting close to the halfway point in this, a 2-hour qualifying race. And the grid positions were set for that this afternoon, and the grid positions for tomorrow's 4-hour race will be set tomorrow morning, starting at 8:15 local time on the Nordschleife. They get 90 minutes to thrash around and try and see what sort of times they can set. Right, getting some words in from Frank Bird, who we saw step out of the number 46 GT2 Mercedes. That was the Hout Racing Team entry. He said, after I drove only 1 hour at the Nordschleife this morning, I found my stint very difficult and slippery now. I just did my permit. This is permit to race on Wednesday, so these are the first laps in a really fast car. Oh, he'd have loved the rain. And also, so I focused on making the car safe and taking a maximum amount of learning effect with me. Yeah, I think that's probably exactly right.
It's probably a very wise approach, isn't it?
Oh, I think so. And Frank, one of the young guns, one of many young guns who had a short career in single-seaters. Actually, his was about 3 years, racing in categories like Formula Renault, and then they just moved across to GT racing, and I think it's just the most sensible decision they can make. Because who knows where it'll lead, but all the opportunities, and also in the top-level GT races, so many of them have now stepped up as the manufacturers are coming to compete in the World Endurance Championship in the hypercar class. There's scope to become the new GT stars, and that's what motor racing needs every now and again, for the top runners to step up and the new talent to try and work its way through and replace them. But exciting times, and for a lot of these drivers it means they'll have a professional racing career that will last a good decade, if not more. And that hasn't been something you can say right across the history of motor racing.
No, definitely. It's a bit of an understatement there, Bruce.
I like to put it in. It's the
Yeah,
light phase.
no, it's good, it's good. As a light phase, we're going to approach half distance in 5 minutes' time, at which point one of the quirky regulations, well, not quirky, one of the regulation quirks I know is that at this point they have to have their headlights on. If you don't, you can be fined for it. At half distance, you must have your headlights on.
I think they could do that on the public road as well.
Well,
Don't get me started.
doesn't save all the energy
Yes.
on the street lighting we don't need. Anyway,
Well, Michael Christensen, he likes his 911s, but he wasn't too keen on the one that was sideways in front of him at the penultimate corner, going through Tiergarten. And one of the Cup 3 class cars was just about to dive in the pits. The driver maybe was just focusing on its arrival at the pits, but got it very wrong, and it literally was at 45 degrees across Christensen's nose. But Matt Campbell moved up into second place and pulled away by 2 and a bit seconds from Christensen. And for Christensen, it wasn't a case of him doing anything necessarily wrong, but it nearly went very wrong twice. Once he was passed, and then once he was nearly taken out. But good news for him, he's going down the slope towards the Dunlop hairpin on the Grand Prix loop. Matt Campbell escaping down the slope ahead of him, just going through the tight right, and you've got the left kink, almost not a kink, they'll be flat out down there towards the Dunlop hairpin. Certainly the Australian got the better of the Dane that time around, but a lucky escape from Christensen as he was just about to complete lap 6. As they fight, as their lap times come down, certainly Campbell's, race leader Danny Juncadere can just about match that time, a tenth of a second slower, but he's sitting on a dozen seconds advantage. However, we still have that penalty of 30 seconds to hit the unfortunately marginally too fast starting number 2, which is the Get Speed Mercedes. Number 7 is the Lamborghini that started from the pits after a misdemeanor in qualifying. And Axel Jeffries has brought that in. He got up to the tail of the top 10. Enjoyed the Zimbabwean racer, enjoying some great scrapping out there on the circuit. And he's got Danny Sufi and Jelmer Berman as his teammates. The one sense is those are the names already on the roof for tomorrow when it's a 4-hour race. For a 2-hour race, you don't need 3 drivers unless you simply want to have an extra pit stop and bring them in just to gain experience. Danny Sufi short of experience on the Nordschleife. Jelmer Berman and Axel Jeffries have plenty thereof. And Jelmer also has competed in a lot of 24-hour races out in Dubai at the start of each year for about the past decade or so. Great success in those. So he's used to racing in the dark, used to racing all around the world. Pit stops are always quite measured in the ADC and VLN managed races, but right now in a qualifying race, it seems even more laid back, if you will. It's about ironing out the faults. They got the penalty to start with, so it was never going to be a victory in a 2-hour race, starting from the back of the pack, from the pit lane. That would be all but insurmountable. However, it's about gaining experience. What I need to see is whether it was Yelmer Berman who got on board, I couldn't quite tell as he got in, or Danny Sufi, the American racer. We will wait and see what name pings up onto our screen when that black and aquamarine, or turquoise really, I suppose, the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini gets back onto the circuit, but they're still changing the tyres.
A car that desperately needs a good result. It's got the pace, just hasn't had the luck, has it? This last couple of years, to be honest. It's certainly not lacking in pace or how it's run. It's just it just needs a result.
Well, numbers are not their friends, really. I mean, actually, it's good we've got 2 Lamborghinis in this race. Of course, AB Sportsline are now running one this year, and that's one that Kelvin van der Linde did so well in the early laps of the race, working his way up to 4th place overall. Now, waiting for Axel Jeffries to be interviewed. He's applying in German. Dotting his conversation with Slicks, so that's what they appear to be going for. They seem to do the tyre change, Snowy, and then go back to put some more on. So maybe they've decided,
yeah,
well, okay, guys, it's getting dark, guys and girls, but let's try the Slicks.
Well, it did mention Yokohama Slicks there, but they're Michelin on the sidewall, I noticed, on the Lamborghini. So it is a free tyre series, this race. This series, you don't have to stick to one, not a controlled tyre. Which adds another layer of interest in there, but definitely Michelin's on the side of that. Even in this fading light now, we're looking at some of the traffic coming down through the Hatzenbach, and there's a very definite dry line through there. Interestingly, just watching the Aston go through here, I'm trying to which one. It's the white Aston, which is it number 32?
It's Theo Nue, which we mentioned a short while ago, who was leading the SP8T class. Yes, that's right, number 67.
Yeah, and that's he's. I think he's struggling with those tyres. I'm guessing he's on at least an intra, if not a wet, because he's doing a lot of off dry line running and taking it through the colder bits and keeping those tyres cool, wet is what they, because obviously wet tyres or even intermediates on a dry bit, they'll just chunk and just degrade unbelievably.
Well, I think this is why also we saw that Porsche a short while ago almost across the nose of Michael Christensen.
Yeah.
They then dived into the pits. Walkenhorst Motorsport have decided Slicks are the way to go, because they've just whacked them onto their number 101 M4 GT3. That's the one shared by Christian Cronjes and Kuba Gimasiak, who was fighting so hard around 6th place, and Andy Soucek, Jake Dennis and Jens Klingman. 3 names, but only 2 will be doing this race, will also go for Slicks. This is Axel Jeffries.
Yeah, it was a bit of a risk, but I think it's just on the line right now with whether we go wets or slicks. And I don't think set of wet tyres would have lasted the whole stint, so we took a gamble and went with inters. Should be okay.
But it's very tricky, so how are the weather conditions now outside?
Honestly, when it's like this, it's pretty easy to understand what's going on because you don't have so much standing water, so it's easy to understand. The biggest thing is just looking after the tyres. So far, we started off quite strong, but towards the end of the stint, the wheels overheated a little bit, so it's a bit of tyre management.
When you're talking with your teammates, how's the track condition outside? Why the slicks? What time you hit?
Yeah, it's a difficult to balance the events in 2 difficult conditions, but there's a dry line everywhere. The problem is as soon as you go offline, it's wet, so it's going to be really tough for him the first couple of laps, but I think after a while it should be okay.
So it's risky, but that's
it's a little bit good, and we also start with good lane, so we have to try something.
Axel Jeffries being interviewed there. We're used to seeing people photobombing in the background, and certainly on F1 paddocks and so and so. You don't expect Franz Conrad, your eponymous team owner, to be jigging around in the background trying to put your driver off on a serious interview. But he was.
70s going on 17.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when
Still acting up.
I thought it was, yes, Axel Jeffries speaking very good German to start with. When we'd heard the talk about the Yokohama Slicks, I presume that was the inimitable, irrepressible Franz Conrad, who let's face it, been there, seen it, done it many, many times over.
If anybody's entitled to a T-shirt, he is.
Yeah, it's just also just wonderful to see that level of enthusiasm. But you don't run a team and race for so many decades if you don't deeply love the sport. Oh, a proper dry line now is appearing on the Nordschleife. Of course, there could still be slip-ups if anyone pulls across to let someone through and gets onto the wet bit, but I just think that Axel Jeffrey's easy decision for him to make, because he wasn't going to have to take the consequence, I think he was right.
I just have, you say so many times, Bruce, when we see these pit lane interviews and the cameras or they go into there and interview a driver, body language is everything, and Axel Jeffries there was really kind of keep it all together, quite serious, that switch onto slicks, and is it the right thing to do? And it's going to be tough for the driver in the car now, the first couple of laps, and I hope I haven't done the wrong thing sending him out. And he kept looking across to somebody in the back of shot for assurance, which is obviously Franz Conrad. So they pan across, and what's he doing? Jigging about, dancing, as well. Your choice is made now, sunshine. I'm just going to dance. Yeah, fine.
I know what he was really doing. He's celebrating its 30 years since he won the Nürburgring 24 hours. That's what it is.
Of course, he's won this, hasn't he? Yes.
He is. He probably hasn't mentioned it to the crew. Sharing with Frank Kathofer, Antonio de Azevedo, and Ernulf Wertheim.
Those that know.
Wow. Kathofer enjoyed it so much he won the following year as well. Right, 6 laps on the board, and one expects the front runners to come in and make their pit stops next time around. We've got 54 minutes remaining in this 2-hour qualifying race, a 4-hour race tomorrow, and top qualifying as well. The one at a time shootout. That should be super, super spectacular. All these elements being knitted together, ticked off on the list as we work towards the big one, the ADAC Nürburgring 24 hours at the end of May. And now the 24 into the pits from second place overall, Matt Campbell, the line speed by Car Collection Porsche, red at the front, white on the flanks, driven very well by the Australian, as you would expect.
And Christensen in Grello as well, Bruce, just behind.
So they came in from second place Campbell, third place Christensen. Of course, the fast start happened just at the end of the previous lap, but still out there on track, still pounding around. Danny Juncker led away from pole, but slightly too fast, he did. And that led to a 30-second penalty that's hanging over him. And he was, at the end of the previous lap, 12 seconds clear. So both Danny Juncker and Adam Christodoulou, who will be taking over, have to go absolutely flat out to try and win this race, because you don't get a 30-second penalty and just ignore it and let them think you can counter it in a 2-hour race around the Nordschleife. So will they end up on the podium, the top 3 positions at the end of this one? Hard to say at the moment, but what is absolutely key is the track is drying super fast. And actually, if you were a team boss, would you not want your drivers in now? Because I think it's dry enough to get those slicks on. Then again, you'd be relying on Danny Juncker, super experienced GT racer, to report, yeah, I can do another lap. The wet tyres will hold up for that, I think. Best lap of the race, 9 minutes 16.9. Let's call it 9 minutes 17. The driver who came in from second place, that's Matt Campbell. Out on the track, still pounding around, trying to get his way past the Caymans and the BMWs, is the race leader. Number 2, Danny Juncker, loses a host of time behind a Cayman. Works one way, works another, but Danny will be surely coming in this time around to hand over to Adam Christodoulou. And Adam, of course, seems to have spent latter half of his career pretty much at the Nordschleife, doing great, great things.
Qualifiers to our race. Just talk us a bit through your opening stint, the wet conditions, now into the dry. How was it?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, but in saying that, it was also a lot of fun. Dried out quick, so you know, a lot of dry racing line really started to develop really fast towards the end. So it was also trying not to overdrive it too much to hurt the tyre, because we were really sliding around and fighting the car. And it made it for a really good challenge, but really enjoyed it. So obviously we're at the front now, and Matthew's in the car. We've gone out in slick tyres, so I said to him it's going to be tricky, but it's definitely the right call at the moment.
sagt gerade auf die Frage, wie es war in der Anfangsphase mit der nassen Strecke und der abtrocknenden Asphalt. Gar nicht so einfach, gerade weil es relativ schnell
Matt
trocken
Campbell
war. Er musste
explaining
aufpassen,
what
das
was
Auto
happening
nicht zu überfahren.
when he was on the track in the Lion Speed by Car Collection Porsche. He worked it up to second place. Very good run from the Australian. Now it's back out on the track, and quite wisely they put the other works Porsche driver in there, Mathieu Jaminet, to complete this race. What a lineup for them. So they're second, but with the penalty hanging over, the 30-second penalty yet to be served or offered to the number 2 race-leading Get Speed Mercedes. They're effective race leaders.
A car we haven't mentioned a great deal, or a team we haven't mentioned, if at all, to be honest, this event so far, Bruce, is the 12th position car now, the number 21 entry, the CP Racing Mercedes, the all-American lineup. Great, you mentioned about Japanese drivers and etc. coming across in Thai before, but an all-American race up here. Charles Putnam, eponymous name for the team, Charles Espinel and Shane Lewis on this occasion, and they'll be doing a lot more of this. They're running Creventic, Hankook tyres series as well, but they're going to do the 24-hour again as they did last year in a GT3 Mercedes, currently running just outside of the top 10, which is more than credible. They're splitting at the moment, Heinemann in the Falcon Motorsports Porsche and Stuck in the Lamborghini Huracan. And they are on the pit as well.
Yeah, we've just got to be quite careful because quite a lot of these cars are just in the process of going into or coming out of the pits. But again, they do many laps. They must have so many air miles commuting across the Atlantic to compete in the NLS races, in the 24-hour series races. They just deeply get endurance racing, and you know what? They're one of the happiest teams up and down the pit lane. They become, they're such good friends. There's really good, relaxed atmosphere at CP Racing, and it's actually, if one looks, they've probably done more years than we realise doing the big commute.
And I have to say, they have one of the best race trucks ever. Is in their breakdown sort of sleeping area is just like NASA Apollos. It's all silver bunks with American flags on and the name. It's literally like walking into a NASA room, and they did it deliberately. It's brilliant. I saw it last year at the 24-hour, and it was absolutely fabulous. So take it on the face of it, it looks as if they're just they're playing at it. They take it incredibly seriously, very seriously. A certain amount of money they spend, but what a relaxed bunch of people.
But you know what? It's right. You concentrate on everything on the car, everything on the track, everything to do with the drivers. But one of the important things in an endurance race is the quality of the sleep you get, the downtime. Even if you're just lying down with your eyes shut, not sleeping in your periods when you're not racing, if you can make that, sport is all about increment. Doesn't matter what the sport is, can I be 1% better? And, I often think, particularly when you get to those morning hours when it's now fully bright, your eyes are completely dry. If you've had an extra half hour of proper sleep, that just makes the world of difference. So yeah, it makes sense.
Well, 15 minutes quality sleep's better than an hour's poor sleep. It's and it's hugely important in this, certainly in 24-hour events, if you can switch off, of course. And right on cue, what do we go and see? The CP Racing number 21 Mercedes on track. So somebody in Germany is listening to us on the other side on the TV camera. Thank you.
It's called happenstance. Of course it is. No, it's good to see them. I'm just waiting to see next time around where that puts them. And actually, let's just talk about the cars that are running in the Pro-Am class of SP9, the top class here. Well, the subclass of the top class, if you know what I mean. Number 11 Mercedes, that started from the outside the front row. Colin Carasani who's driving that. It's now in the hands of Marcel Marshevitz, who's an absolute regular here. It's running in effective 5th place, but let's just wait, as I say, to the end of this lap to check that everybody has made a pit stop. CP Racing, we just mentioned them. They were listed as 12th at the moment. Shane Lewis has just taken over. And then Iron Force, another car collection run Porsche. That was Janis Fischer, Jan-Erik Schluten, and Fabian, brother of Sebastian Vettel. Car number 29, just trying to see, I haven't really seen them on the score sheet. They're a bit further back. In fact, have they started? I'll fill you in on that one in a second. Who else is in SP9 Pro-Am? Equipe Vitesse, running an Audi this year. And again, it's always good to have a subclass because a lot of people... Oh, of course, Henry Walkenhorst, who was running in the top, just outside the top 10, the number 100 BMW is also in Pro-Am. So drivers of greater years or lesser experience along with the pros. And some of the wet weather tyres, the rain tyres on which people started the race, anyone who came into the last lap, their tyres are so full of pickup. The surface sections have started breaking away. They're horrible beasts. Those are ones we just treated to a sight of. Just mentioning that number 100 Henry Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW, and waiting for Jörg Brewer to go back out in that, possibly Sami Batty-Trogan. That was the car from which those tyres came, and if you well, you wouldn't want to put your hands on, they'd be very, very hot, but should you do so with a pair of heat-proof gloves, they'd probably almost stick to them. Those tyres had really, really chunked. So one lap too many. Often difficult, Snowy, on a regular size circuit, do I do another lap? But the consequence is around 25 kilometres. If you've got the decision wrong, you're going for an awfully long time on tyres that are no longer playing the game.
Yeah, Darren Turner mentioned during that interview, didn't he, that he would hopefully, we hope to get the car back into the race, the Dürr Motorsport Aston Martin Vantage, which he did from the SP9 category. That's just retaken to the track again. And I was just thinking, why is it only 4 laps down? It seemed to be the pit's a lot longer. Of course, forgetting it's 10 minutes laps, so 4 laps here, it's 40 minutes. Yeah, it's 40 minutes down in the pits, that's why. It's been there for a long time, of course. So that car's back out again, as predicted, so more data collection, and it is running, sadly, I have to say, for Darren, in a place he's not accustomed to, which is 60th and last position.
No.
He will probably message me and say, can you just delete the word last from that sentence, please? 60th will do fine, thank you.
Race leader in the pits, so Adam Christodoulou now strapped in.
And serving penalty.
Serving the penalty.
It's in the penalty box area.
Yeah, he's at the pit entrance penalty serving area under the balcony of the podium. And then we'll get down to his pit garage position. Just remember, 30-second penalty, that one that feels like 30 minutes. And he came in 2 laps ago before the other cars behind him, the Line Speed by Car Collection Porsche and the Manthey Porsche came in. They were about a dozen seconds, thereabout, behind him. So clearly with the 30-second penalty, it's going to be a very steep mountain for Adam Christodoulou to climb. Will he even finish in the top 3? But certainly that car, on the opening lap of the race, really, really broke clear. And now the car is out, away from its time-serving penalty and into position. This is the number 2 Mercedes from Team Get Speed. Driver out, driver in, so Adam Christodoulou in and Danny Juncadella out. He's doing the strapping in. Waiting to see what they're going to put on there, but I don't expect a new set of rain tyres. We're fairly sure it'll be out onto slicks. Michelin slicks being fitted. The Get Speed is a team that's really, as if on cue, a brand new shiny set of Michelin slick tyres is brought out. And 10 years Get Speed has been a team, and it's getting stronger and stronger, gaining work support, and with it come a roster of works drivers. But Adam Christodoulou, I wonder how many laps of the Nord Drive that Adam has done. Must be talking 4 figures.
Yeah, must be thousands. Must be.
Because of course what we forget is a lot of these drivers spend time here, racing and practicing and testing, but they're also here with the manufacturers as well, driving the road cars around and helping to develop those, and with the tyre suppliers trying to help their tyre work. It feels as though it's almost dark. Doesn't seem like it at the pits because we have the lighting on the gantries above, and from the hospitality suites, lights in the grandstands opposite, but out on the Dottinger Höhe, for the camera crews trying to pick out the cars, it's getting harder and harder. Right, in the pits at the moment, 2, 72 and 40. 72, number 2 is the previous race leading Get Speed Mercedes. Number 72 is the BMW Junior Team M4 that started from the pits, and also starting from the pits was Mike Rockenfeller in his car, Team Scherer PHX Audi, number 40. So they've got up the order, but we'll go back down.
Now, no change of driver there for the number 2 race leader. It's still saying Danny Juncadella.
No, Danny Juncadella is in the pits being interviewed, so I don't need to be a sleuth.
No, you don't. No, I hadn't seen that bit. But
Adam Christodoulou. So
that's actually quite reassuring, because I was thinking that exactly that it should change. But it said out and it didn't change. It hasn't changed the order. So BMW Junior Team number 72 has switched to Johansson. So maybe they just haven't done their driver board on it.
Yeah, flick of a switch, that'd be young Swede Erik Johansson. The last car of the front runners still in the pits, but probably just about to go back out is the Mike Rockenfeller driven number 40. That was one of 3 cars that had to start from pit exit. And as, in fact, I'm trying to think which the drivers pointed out, that meant they had 1 lap more fuel, but with the track conditions changing as fast as they were, maybe they didn't feel they might have made the decision not to use that extra lap of fuel and come in just as soon as possible to get on the slicks. But anyhow, with 8 laps now on the board, everybody has served their pit stop. But expect, one would think, the number 24 Porsche from Line Speed by Car Connection, Mathieu Jaminet has taken that over from Matt Campbell. I would expect that to be at the front of the queue, because it was second behind the Get Speed number 2 Mercedes, but that one, of course, had that 30-second penalty to serve at pit in, which would have dropped it back. Proper darkness on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. This is the first of 2 qualifying races ahead of this year's 24 hours at the end of May. And in between these 2, this is a 2-hour run. It's a 4-hour run tomorrow afternoon. We have top qualifying, which is a 1-by-1 shootout for the top 30 drivers. And that is going to be a real spectacle. Don't know what the weather's going to be tomorrow. It was dry this morning at the Nordschleife, wet this afternoon going into the race that started in late afternoon. We've been through evening, we're now into near full darkness around the Nordschleife. Harder and harder for the drivers to pick out the dry line, but then again, if they're on the right line, that is where the dry line should be. And the drivers started the race almost universally on wet weather tyres, on rain tyres. A couple of cars, including the number 5 Audi from Shearer Sport PHX, in which Vincent Kolb started on intermediates. That was not the way to go. They came in and had to change onto wet tyres, but everybody at their pit stop appears to have gone onto slicks. I think you'd be fairly mad if you didn't. Quite a few penalties have been served as well. Quite a few teams served were penalised before the start and therefore had to start from the pit. Some of those penalised doubly so they also had to have a time penalty. And the number 2 Get Speed Mercedes earned its own penalty by Danny Juncker just getting away a fraction too soon at the start of the race from pole.
Glorious sounds. We have a little bit of audio there coming from going into Tiergarten. It happened to be the CP Racing Mercedes. Again, I knew it was a Mercedes. Just saw the rear wing going through with that glorious sound, that big meaty V8. It just has a deep growl to it. It's a menacing grille. It's got a glorious sound. It's a proper front-engine GT car, much like the Mercedes as well, and the BMWs. There's just something I just love front-engined GT cars. Big V8, big slicks, big wing, big circuit. What's not to like?
Exactly so. And in fact, just the other day, I was behind an AMG 6.3 Mercedes, and that was rumbling through traffic, making a fabulous sound, and probably getting through a bit more fuel than planned. So one of the features of this race this weekend is the global debut of the GT2 Mercedes in racing. 2 of them competing here. Both of them had little problems. We heard that there's an alternator problem on the car from... Which one had it? It was the HRT, or was it the Get Speed? It was the Get Speed.
Oh, it was the Get Speed car, wasn't it? Yes.
But led with Michael Grenier. That is now back out on the track. He said it had become a test session for them ahead of tomorrow's race. Merrick Bockman has just gone rumbling out of the pit lane in that, and the number 46 car, which was Team HRT, out racing team version, that had a shorter pit stop. It had a little moment for Frank Bird out at Klostertal, but he said, look, I only did my ring permit on Wednesday, I wasn't going to take any risks. That came in, had a bit of a pit stop, and it seems that unless they've failed to change flick the driver switch, the young British racer Frank Bird has gone back for the second part of its run. And right at this stage in his Nürburgring racing career, probably not a bad idea. Get as much experience as he possibly can. And Gunther Aberer, who's the long-term boss of many teams, he's boss of Schnitzelam Racing, or team manager, was explaining it was an engine belt that was broken, which is pretty much what Michael Grenier was explaining. So confirmation of all of that. So how low will the lap times go? Best time in qualifying on a dry track was 8 minutes 13. Best time we've had in the race so far, but these are by cars on intermediate or predominantly wet weather tyres, has been a 9 minute 16.9. Now all the top guns are out on the track as they go past oh my word, going past a Golf at the back of the field there, just where the track was slippery, but Marek Botman gets that done. However, now the cars are out there on slick tyres, so let's see what the time will do. Always interesting to see that here from the drivers who just got out. One driver who's got out that looks like he hasn't gone in yet, but Arno Klaassen, who's sharing the Equipe Vitesse Audi with Michael Heinrich and Christian Bollrath, but as soon as the microphone's put in front of his face, suddenly Arno lights up, and clearly he's got something to report. So he has been out there, but fading light, wet track, and then towards the end of your stint, Snowy having to suss the fact that it's drying. Where is it drying? How fast is it drying? Should I come in a lap earlier? But Arno obviously done a good job in his Audi.
He's looking very happy, isn't he, with his work he's done?
Yeah. And I think, you know, for all drivers, it's going to be very tricky in these conditions. But, you know, he's clearly got on top of them, learnt something, brought the car back in, handed it over to Bollrath. And it's in the top 20. 30 GT3 class. Car started in the top class, the SP9 as we have it here. And, you know, being in the top 20, that's not a bad little go. And that's one of the cars in the SP9 Pro-Am class that we started working our way through before. But Arno, yeah, looks very pleased with life.
And so he should do.
Of course, the key is going to be which car is where when they get to the start-finish line this time around. The pit stops have all been served in the top class. In fact, every driver in the field has now served their pit stop bar one, which is one of the TCR class cars. And that surely is going to be coming in any time now. But up front, just remember, the number 2 Mercedes from Team Get Speed led comfortably in the hands of Danny Juncadella, 19 seconds clear after 2 laps, 11 seconds after the first lap. Then that gap came down and down, and then the news came through as the gap came down to just 12 seconds, and a 30-second penalty had to be served by Danny Juncadella at the end of his stint. And only then did they start the pit stop and the driver change to Adam Christodoulou. But that, I would reckon, we will have Mathieu Jaminet coming through in the lead in the 24 Porsche. The second place, by all reckoning, should be the 911 Porsche, now in the hands of Frederic Machiavicki. And I think Danny Juncadell's car, when he started the number 2 Mercedes, just waiting for that to flip through to say Christodoulou, should come through in about 3rd position. And then next in line should be the number 72 BMW, now driven by Eric Johansson, the BMW Junior team entry.
Well, we're about to find out as the number 002 car comes over the line. Counting the gap to second place. It's still leading by, according to our time screen, it's 6.6 seconds ahead still.
Okay, that's interesting. However, of course, the number 2 Mercedes from Get Speed pitted a lap later than its rival, so less time to put, you know, well, let's have a look. Yeah, going through the twister behind. The 2 Porsches, 24 and 11, Mathieu Jaminet and Fred Machiavicki, separated by only a second, but they are 6.5 seconds down on the race leader. So Danny Juncadella clearly did some very tidy laps before the pit stop, while his rivals came in.
New fastest lap for Frank Machiavicki there with a 9:02.2. Mathieu Jaminet with a 9:02.7, so just a half a second between them on lap times there. But 6.5 seconds.
14 seconds faster than the fastest laps before. That's on their first flying lap on these. First full flying lap. Let's see what they can do next time around. Of course, there's traffic.
And circuit's a lot drier now.
How low will they go? Properly dark around the Nordschleife. And in many ways, it's quite good for the drivers that they saw the dry line just starting to appear, then becoming more obvious. But as it became more obvious, the light started to fade. But they knew where it was by then. It's on the racing line, but not anywhere beyond that. So anyone going a little bit wide could have a little bit of a wake-up call. 9 minutes, 2.2 seconds. Fred Machiavicki, fastest lap of the race so far. And finally we have the confirmation of what our eyes saw, which is Adam Christodoulou did take over from Danny Juncadere, and of course further proof was provided, or earlier proof was provided by the fact that we saw Danny Juncadere being interviewed, but always good to just double up, confirm things. Right, let's have a little look down through the classes. Cup 2, it's been all about the number 184 entry that led in the first part of the race and continues to do so. And what have we got left? Just a whisker over half an hour remaining, but 184, Kay Kramer racing, pushing on very nicely indeed. Now Krantz at the wheel, leading Cup 2, Moritz Krantz. SP10, still the KCMG Toyota Supra, now in the hands of Eduardo Liberati. Took over from Josh Burton. They've been driving for that team for a long time in a lot of different vehicles, actually, it must be said, working their way through the manufacturers. I'm sure all the sector times are going to be tumbling. Certainly will. The track is getting drier all the time. So right now we are at the 3/4 distance in this 2-hour race, a qualifying race for next month's ADAC Nürburgring 24 hours. Started in on a wet track. It had been raining. For the first drivers, almost all went out on wet weather tyres. A couple went out on intermediates, found it was the wrong thing to do, had to come in and put on the wet weather tyres. A few cars have had problems. It's only a qualifying race, it doesn't matter too much, it's about getting the experience. We've got those brand new first ever race for Mercedes GT2s. And they have been using this very much as a test session, not just for the cars, but also for the drivers like Frank Bird trying to get up to speed at the Nürburgring. Just got his permit to compete in the 24 hours back on Wednesday. In fact, I'm sure early this year he was entered in one of the NLS races, but maybe didn't actually compete in it. Maybe the car wasn't still around when he needed it.
I think you're right.
I'm sure I've seen his name on one of the entry lists, unless I was getting ahead of myself working on the 24 hours entry list a month or two ago. Now, are we going to get lap times under the 9-minute mark? I sense we are this time around.
A little stalker we haven't sort of noticed so much there is the 5th place car, number 30, the Earl Bamber at the wheel, the Fricadelli Ferrari 296. We've been concentrating on that so much, and strategies and times and penalties and whatever, and just that Ferrari that has yet to really show its hand. Well, it is now, as you say, with of course, first 3/4 of the race through, this is a bit different. Normally it's half an hour to go rather than an hour, as in NLF races normally. So at the moment, a strong performance from the new 296 Ferrari.
Yes, it was at the tail end of the top 10. I think I saw it in 9th place in the hands of David Pittard. It was then picked off by the number 72, which is the BMW Junior team entry. Remember, Conor De Filippi started from the pits, working his way up through the order. That's now in the hands of Eric Johansson. That's in 4th. Behind it is the car we talked about, Earl Bamber in 5th. But Earl was 4.5 seconds faster on the previous lap, so he'll be closing in very fast indeed on that. So we'll give you the margins at the end of lap 9, 7.6 seconds was the margin. Adam Christodoulou ahead of Mathieu Jaminet goes to prove they were very good in and out laps for Danny Juncadere. Penalty served, 30 seconds in all. Back into the race, back into the lead. Track is drying, still easy enough to make a mistake. Certainly the light conditions have changed. Now they're into full darkness, and really it's extraordinary for the drivers. So much light around the pit area, a slight amount of light as they're going around the Grand Prix loop when they double back behind the paddock, but as soon as they turn left and left at Sabine Schmidt's curve, the lights go out. Thereafter, they're looking for any vestigial light they might get around Adenauer Bridge, but that's largely down below the circuit, the restaurant at the foot of the hill there. And apart from the odd campfire going from, well, we have seen quite a few spectators already practicing their camping. This is their qualifying weekend.
Exactly, yeah. It's qualifying for everybody involved, yes.
Yeah.
Cars, caterers, mechanics, technicians, you name it.
Yeah, can castle builders, they're all out there, refining the skills they've picked up over the decades.
And of course, so very, very different to Le Mans 24-hour, where so much of the circuit is illuminated, and it is very, very, very different. Spa the same as well as Nürburgring here. You get a little bit past the pits, and then you go to the top of Eau Rouge through Radion, and all of a sudden you're into the darkness again, into the Ardennes forest. It's wonderful, flat chat. And where'd you brake? I don't know. Have a guess.
After the car in front.
If it gets bumpy, you've gone off.
Now, one of the smiliest drivers in racing, with a record like his, why not? Mike Rockenfeller, he being interviewed in the pits, it's as though he's just won the World Championship. But this is a team with so much experience. Unfortunately for them, one bit of experience they didn't have was not getting a penalty before the start of the race. But Mike has handed over to fellow DTM champion Martin Tomczyk. The car is up into 6th place overall. Waiting to see, actually not a very good lap last time around for Tomczyk. Let's see what sort of pace he can find. But certainly Team Scherer PHX with quite a handful, a cluster of cars in this event heading to the 24 hours. Certainly Rockenfeller doesn't look as though he's had a bad time. He looks as though they've probably learned a few new tricks in the changing conditions.
Bruce, I don't know, and I can't speak for him, but I would suggest that having survived that horrific accident at Le Mans a decade or more ago, 2011 I think it was, that extraordinary accident that was a proper plane crash of an accident, having walked away from that intact and still racing, I think I'd count every day as a blessing and be smiling as well.
Yeah, it was just after Mulsanne corner, and in fact there was someone I know, Dan Partel, who ran the Euro Series first in Formula Ford 1600 and Formula Ford 2000 with the likes of Ayrton Senna Racing, and then of course Opel Lotus, producing the great names, the Mika Häkkinens, the Alan McNishes, etc., etc. The house he was staying in, part of Mike's car landed in the garden. Yes, you're quite right. You have motor racing crashes, and that was an air crash. Unfortunately, it was a GT class Ferrari. I think just moved marginally into his path. That's all it took.
It's all it took, exactly. And you just mentioned Alan McNish, who of course had that earlier one in that same race. It looked like it wasn't going to be Audi's day, but they regrouped and did it. But most importantly, both drivers, Alan McNish and Mike Rockenfeller, each suffering monumental crashes, and the testament to the strength of the cars these are both getting out of them. And I think if I remember correctly, that Rockenfeller, he'd already extracted himself from the car and got away from it and gone to lie down to go, kind of like, wow, check all my sensors and count all the phalanges, etc., etc. And the marshals got to it and were horrified because they couldn't find him. He'd already got himself out of it. They thought he'd been thrown clear, but he hadn't. He got out and said, well.
It was a very hard place to get cameras too. And of course this year, Mike will be racing back at the Mans. It's going to work soundly though, be the NASCAR Garage 56 entry. That's why he's smiling. He's having to learn to be a good old boy. And certainly the drivers in that, Jensen Button, massively enthusiastic about the project. It's something quite left field, and I'm all for a bit of that.
Yeah.
The driver lineup they have for the 24 hours, that's going to be quite exciting.
Can't wait.
Certainly make a great sound.
It will.
Sure, the Camaro.
And guarantee some good interviews as well.
Oh yeah. Part and parcel. Right, 10 laps on the board. The gap's only come down by a second, but we've got below 9 minutes, 8 minutes 49. New fastest lap of the race for A. Christodoulou, not just any A. Christodoulou, Adam Christodoulou. 6.6 seconds clear of Mattia Jaminet. And tucked in behind him, just 0.4 of a second behind him, is Fred Machiavicchi. So we've got the Get Speed Mercedes that's served its time penalty, 30 seconds served, and it's still leading this race. Mattia Jaminet, the Alliance Speed by Car Collection. Porsche, red and white car, in second place. Third place just behind him, Fred Machiavicchi in the Manthey Porsche. And then behind them there is a full, wait for it, 1.25 minutes back to the number 72 BMW Junior Team M4 GT3. And that has, it's been caught quite quickly actually. Johansson is not lapping anywhere near as fast as his rivals. He did a 9-minute 13-second lap, and that's why the gap's coming down hugely to Earl Bamber in the Fricadelli Ferrari, who just did an 8-minute 55-second lap. So some drivers are beginning to wonder if some of them are just on a drying track, but still on intermediate, if they've gone for intermediates rather than slicks, because there's a huge discrepancy in times. And just to reiterate, fastest lap of the race, I was about to say 8 minutes 49. I had said that about our race leader Adam Christodoulou, but if I scroll down to 13th place, Jens Klingmann, Walkenhorst Motorsport, we know their cars are on slicks, their M4 GT3s. 8 minutes 41.
So you were debating whether it's going to be under a 9 minute.
I will forget that.
Yes. It's considerably under, isn't it? Jens Klingmann, 8:41.
Yeah, so there have been some really good drives in this race. The three cars that started from the pit lane, number 40 is up to 6th place overall. That's the car that Martin Tomczyk is driving, that Mike Rottenfeller started. But that's 2 places behind the Eric Johansson-driven BMW Junior Team car. But all the spade work there was done by Connor De Filippi, who propelled the car pretty quickly towards the tail of the top 10. Enjoyed some really good scraps. And that car is now running 4th. And the other one that started from the pits hasn't done so well. It's the Lamborghini Huracan from Conrad Motorsports, Jelmer Berman. He's not doing bad. His lap time isn't brilliant yet on slicks. Let's have another lap. Some drivers seem to take an extra lap to get full confidence in their slicks. What their lights can pick out in the dark is a dry line, but it's not always easy. But Jelmer Berman, we heard from his teammate Axel Jeffries talking about whether he thought it was quite right. He was confident it was right to go to slicks, but he was the one in the pit garage, not the one who was about to take on the challenge. Yellow flags at Tiergarten, the very end of the lap. Marshall's post 2:01. That's just flashed on our screen.
Now, unbelievably, that's the first of this race.
Is it? I feared I might have missed some, but wow.
I've deliberately kept quiet all the way through, saying we hadn't had any thought, because it would be the curse of. It's the first one we've had.
Right.
It's still only at a 120.
Jens Klingmann has just dived into the pits. Maybe he wants even slicker slicks. That's the 102 Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW. It's got up to 13th position, but it's in the pit lane. It will lose positions. Yellow flag still at Tiergarten, the very following corner, Hohenrhein. Walkenhorst Motorsport obviously just going almost in testing phase, because they've also brought in the 102 and also the sister car 101 into the pit lane. Christian Cronjes just pulling to a halt in front of their garage in that. Now the cars look slightly wonderfully dirty. The filth is coming off the track now, the wet track, landing on the black and red Advan sponsored and Yokohama sponsored Walkenhorst cars. So Walkenhorst Motorsport suddenly having to get busy. Track is now clear. The yellow flags removed at Marshall's Post 201, which is Tiergarten, and also 202, which is Hohenrhein. And Nicholas Koenigbauer will be the driver, explaining what's happening at Walkenhorst Motorsport. He's the team manager. He has been caught by Patrick Simon. Appears to be unsupported, but they do have the fastest lap of the race. 8 minutes 41. That was set by Jens Klingmann the previous time. But obviously, top 10 position going away because they're in the pits and they should be out on the track. If you've never watched these races before, these qualifying races, it's as much for track time as for position. It's about, obviously, you've got the advantage of winning and the prestige that goes with that. But for a lot of the crews, we heard earlier from Darren Turner, there was a vibration on his Duo Motorsport Aston Martin Vantage. Get it sorted. That's what they're doing. They're learning. For a lot of these teams, they're new to their cars this season, so a lot to learn.
Well, as you said, Bruce, when we saw the interview with DT in the garage there, he said that he was interviewed, are you going to go back out? And he was all smiles, completely positive, as you said, as is always his way of, you bet we're going to go back out again. It's resolve it, sort it out, fun it is, and let's get some miles under the belt. Why wouldn't you want to drive the Nürburgring then Aston?
No, exactly so. Right, news coming through, translation of the interview from Nicholas Koenigbauer, the team manager of Walkenhorst. 101, that was Christian Cronjes, had an off at the end of the lap, so he came back into the pits to tell them about it. And 102, just set the fastest lap of the race, came back in because Jens Klingmann said the steering wheel was no longer centred. That's worth coming in for, I feel.
Yes, having just set the fastest lap of the race. Yes, okay. Yes, drivers are made of different things.
They are, aren't they?
Yes.
Not marzipan.
Yes, don't think we quite always understand it, but and perhaps it's best not to.
That could well be the case. So, for those out on the track, all on slicks. We're fairly confident of that. The lap times are coming down as the dry line is getting marginally drier. No lighter, of course. It's full darkness out around the circuit. Just waiting to see if 101 has gone back out. Christian Cronjes has returned to the track, waiting for Jens Klingman to follow the other Walkenhorst, well, one of the other Walkenhorst M4s back out. Hopefully that steering wheel will be centred now. Let's see how low he can go. We're about to get to the end of 11 laps. We've got time for, well, it'll be time for 2 more laps, because the race leader, Adam Christodoulou, is just going up the rise towards Tiergarten into that final sequence of turns. Tiergarten completed into Hohenrhein, turning left onto the start-finish straight. The bright lights of the pit lane just up ahead of him, and then behind are the 2 Porsches. Should be close together in second and third. Mathieu Jaminet, line speed by car collection. Fred Makiewicz started the lap a quarter of a second down. Looks though it's almost identical margin, but have we had a swapping of positions? Just waiting to see if that's flipped around as they come through the darkness. There was 7.6 seconds down. Almost identical times to the race leader. And how fast are they all? All 3 of the front runners lapped 8-minute 35-second laps. That's extraordinary. In the darkness, top 3 covered by 8.1 seconds. But it's still Adam Christodoulou, the get speed Mercedes, leading the race by 7.5 seconds from Mathieu Jaminet, who is just in front of Fred Makiewicz. So it's line speed by car collection Porsche from Manthey Racing Porsche as they chase the get speed Mercedes. Huge margin over the 4th place car, waiting for that to come through. Will it be Earl Bamber in the Fricadelli Ferrari, as he was fast closing on the 4th place Eric Hansen in that BMW Junior Team M4?
And I fear the Valkenhorst Motorsport BMW, the 102 entry, that steering not being centred, or steering wheel not being centred issue, maybe a little bit more fundamental than we fear, because it's now being pushed back into the garage, and with just under 15 minutes to go, may not be rejoining. So I think he's broken it driving it so fast. Basically, it would appear, Jens Klingman.
First the sound barrier, then the steering. Still waiting. To give an example of how far clear Adam Christodoulou, Mathieu Jaminet and Fred Makiewicz are, well, quality names in quality cars, still waiting for the 4th place car to come through. They're about a minute and a bit behind the battle for 2nd place, but it looks as though this lap it's gone out even more. Right, as I speak, Eric Johansson comes through in 4th place. He is 1 minute, more than 1.5 minutes back on Makiewicz in 3rd. So the 72 BMW Junior Team M4 GT3, Eric Johansson whistles through, but he was 12 seconds slower than the driver who's giving chase. Earl Bamper, Le Mans winner, has got his tail up and he's closing in fast. He's only, well, he's a fraction of a second down. In fact, he's 0.3 of a second down. So if the number 72 BMW can be caught on screen, black, yellow and red, the colours of the BMW Junior Team, then Earl Bamber should be right behind him in the Fricadelli, the red and white Ferrari. And in turn, he's only got 3 seconds clear margin over that number 40 Audi from Scherer PHX, with Martin Tomczyk giving chase. Then he in turn has only got 4.5 seconds over the best place of the Falco Motorsports Porsches, Joel Eriksson pressing on in that. So some pretty close stuff out there. Fastest lap, 8 minutes 35.4 seconds by the driver in 3rd place, Fred Makiewicz in the Grello Porsche. Green and yellow, entered by Manthey Racing.
Yeah, just looking right down at the opposite end of the field, Bruce, that I noticed that the Darren Turner, number 69, Door Motorsport Aston, has pitted. I just hoped it wasn't terminal. Indeed it isn't. It looks like the owner has now got into that car.
Phil Gore.
Correct.
I have good news. I like to bring good news. We started with 60. We now have 61, because with just 1 lap on the board, Teichmann Racing have got, I don't know which of the Griezmanns, whether it's Bjorn or Jorg, out onto the circuit in their GT4 Toyota Supra. So Teichmann Racing shared with Felix von der Laden and Michael Teichmann, he of the team. So
to what you're actually reporting there is that more cars are going to finish the race than started it.
It's alchemy, I tell you. They've all got it alchemy.
Infamy.
He was there. He was there. Yeah, certainly Martin Tomczyk has been going very well. He was about 5 seconds down on the pace of the front three, but he's picking his way up the order. That's the number 40, Shearer PHX. I can't say PHX. Why don't you say Shearer Phoenix? But I can't. That's the new team name, Shearer PX. I can't get it right now. PHX. Dear me. Started by Mike Rockefeller, Martin Tomczyk working his way up to 6th place. Haven't seen any penalties being issued. There were so many issued before the start of the race. But recently they seem to have been behaving out on the track. I think simply the race officials just, it seems they were coming lap after lap. It just took so long to go through the pile of paperwork and issue the punishments. Some were issued before the start of the race, others for offences once we got underway. But here we have 10.5 minutes remaining in this 2-hour race, the first of 2 qualifying races for the Nürburgring 24 Hours, which will be run at the end of next month. Tomorrow's race is twice as long though, and I'll tell you what's going to be really good. Just ahead of that, we've got the top qualifying, the shootout for the top 30, where they go one at a time around the circuit, released at intervals, and that should be really quick fire. Fastest lap of this race, 8 minutes 35.4. What sort of times will they manage on a dry track? Well, I can tell you, we're still about 20 plus seconds away from the qualifying pace in the dry this morning. Let's see what they can do tomorrow.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if we saw sub 8 minutes in shootout qualifying tomorrow.
I'm thinking so.
Clear laps, clear traffic, clear run at it. Yeah, wouldn't be at all surprised.
So we've got time for this lap and the next one.
Yep.
I'm just going to run down the classes a little bit. Cup 3. Don't talk too much about Cup 3. That's the class for the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 Club Sport. Quite a mouthful, quite a long name, but there have been staunch races here. W&S Motorsport run a great team, and that's leading that Jürgen Föhringer and Sebastian Carcon, driver from Luxembourg aboard that one. They're leading that class. Where does that put them overall? Of course, they'll be way behind the Cup 2 runners, but Sebastian Carcon in 39th position. Best of the Porsche Cup class car, which is Cup 2, is 20 positions further forward, Moritz Kranz. One of the things about this race was the global debut of the Mercedes AMG GT2. 1 competing down at Monza, 2 competing here. And the entry from Team HRT. Frank Bird has done all the driving thus far, a bit of a moment at Klostertal, but he was gaining experience all the time. He then went out again after he'd come in for inspection. And it's about to change hands. I saw Frank getting out, and Elliot Earhart is driving aboard now. Or it may well be he's already, maybe they're going to the 3rd driver, because I had a sort of suspicion that Frank Bird was out of the car, did not get back in when they were having a look at it. So I'm sure Earhart's just done the 2nd stint in that, which ergo means it should be Thomas Jaeger driving later on to complete this race. Well, it's been a really good run from Get Speed. Qualified on pole, quite an advantage. If you could get down to the first turn ahead, no spray. The track has since dried out, but just remember, after 2 laps, Danny Juncadella had opened out a lead of over 19 seconds over the best of the rest. The gap, though, did not continue to extend. It came down, went the opposite direction, down to just a dozen seconds, as the Manthey Racing Porsche, closely followed by the Lion Speed Porsche, got to within those dozen seconds. And then the penalty was issued, 30 seconds. To be served at a standstill. The pit entry before Danny Juncadella handed over to Adam Christodoulou. Yet they surmounted that. If anything, since then, since those pit stops, Danny Christodoulou settled down. He's now just eked out a tiny bit more of an advantage. 8.6 seconds. You know what? They did, last time around, the top 3 runners did laps in 8 minutes 35 apiece. Now, lap 12 on the board, 8 minutes 32 for our race leader Adam Christodoulou. Will the advantage go out from 8 and a bit seconds? Waiting for Fred Machiavicki to come through in 2nd place. 8.2 seconds, nothing in it. And Machiavicki also laps in an 8 minute 32, but he's 6,000ths of a second faster than Adam Christodoulou. So it's a bit of a bragging right there. That will not be the fastest lap of the race, surely, because this is the final lap and the track is drying all the time. The fuel load is dropping all the time. And importantly for Fred Machiavicki, he just gained a tiny bit of a margin over Mathieu Jaminet as those positions were swapped. Moved ahead. Jaminet, though, is only half a second behind. Very tight. Top 3 cars covered by 8 3/4 seconds. Just double checking, Moritz Kranz still leading the Cup 2 class. He's 18th overall, just moved ahead of Christian Cronjes, but that's because the 101 Walkenhorst Motorsport car, of course, had that problem. Little off, served its time in the pit, so Moritz Kranz doing what he can, waving the flag for the Cup 2 races, up to 18th overall. In fact, Christian Cronjes just come into the pits, that's why the position has just changed. We have a spinner sitting sideways in the dark on what is the final lap of the race.
One of the Porsches,
and we have another car
530
in the darkness, also stationary.
I reckon there's been contact there.
Can't tell which is the direction they should be travelling in, but they're both facing at least 90 degrees different to each other.
Well, one of them is the rent-to-drive Cayman 718 from the VT3 class.
That's the car that started in the pits and took a very long time to get going.
Yeah, but I just want
racing.
You never want to speculate too much, but 2 cars off at the same time, opposite sides of the track.
Right.
Tends to point towards something happening.
Indeed, we've got the location. It's down at the bottom of the hill at the Dunlop hairpin.
Yes, I didn't say that bit, yes.
No, I'd only just seen that information coming in. Don't think that's affected our race leader, though. Adam Christodoulou started this lap with a 8.5 second advantage. It's come down by half a second to Fred Machiavicki, who's still being kept very honest. He's just 6/10 ahead of Mathieu Jaminet. So it's Mercedes, Porsche, big gap. And now Fricadelli's Ferrari is up ahead of the BMW of Joel Eriksson, and so too is Martin Tomczyk past Eriksson. So Tomczyk is pushing on. We've got Mercedes, Porsche, Ferrari, Audi, Porsche, BMW as Johansson goes backwards in the BMW Junior Team entry.
Yeah, that cable that's in the gravel down at Dunlop hairpin, it's on the outside. I'm guessing that the other car, according to the GPS, has moved on, so it looks like that might well have been a connection, but they've sorted it out for the other car. That's gone away, but the 530 is still stuck in the gravel there on the outside. Hopefully, no cause of any kind of flag or anything here. I think we have actually yellow flags opposite 22 and 23 Marshalls Post. That's all there. Just because that car's there, but 3 minutes 44 seconds to go on the clock. Of course, the lead car at the moment is we have got. It's still not code 60. We've had a whole race with no code 60 yet.
Oh, I can't believe you said that.
Tempted. I can hear the sucking of the teeth from here. Worldwide.
So Adam Christodoulou, halfway around the lap, appears to have this one in the bag.
I can't believe you just said that.
I did say that. Weirdly, as I said that, I just mentioned it. His advantage over Fred Machiavicki has gone from 8.8 seconds to 8. As I looked at my screen, he got to the next timing sector. Another 2 seconds has come off. He has not got this one in the bag. You heard it here first. Adam Christodoulou hanging on in the lead for the Get Speed Mercedes, but at this point around the lap, both the chasing Porsches are catching him.
You just heard Bruce Jones on autocorrect.
That normally puts the spellings in the wrong, letters in the wrong order, doesn't it? It does on your phone.
So they've just got to Exmuller, our race leader that is, that long run up to, or down to Bergwerk now. So not quite halfway through the lap. We sort of regard her act, don't we, as sort of halfway through. Highest part of the circuit.
I sort of think Bergwerk. No, actually.
Bergwerk's.
I'd say probably Versailles or Callenhart. I'd say if you put that little wheel on a stick and push it along the track as surveyors do, it'll be about the halfway point. We can argue about that later.
What age are you speaking from? Wheels on sticks. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I tell you what.
Yes.
Martin Tomczyk is pushing so hard.
That's the Ferrari, isn't it? Yes.
Of Earl Bamber, and Bamber came super close to coming into contact as they both dived past one of the production type cars, and another one just swerved to the left, to the right, and the closing speed, the passing speed is absolutely huge. But you know what? For Earl Bamber, having got the Ferrari for Fricadelli Racing, the local team here, Klaus Aberden's team up into fourth. He's not going to cede that position if he could do anything about it. And as I said, Adam Christodoulou had this on the bag and he suddenly lost 2 seconds of his lead. He's got a 1/10 of a second back. He's responding, trying to make sure that my message wasn't entirely...
Oh, Tomczyk over the back of that Ferrari literally like a cheap suit. It's just so close. How he's missed it, I just do not know. But Earl Bamber doing his utmost to say for Fricadelli Racing there, you're not having this. We haven't quite got on the podium, but you're certainly not an army of fourth place. But so close in the final stages of this. This is for fourth position, Bruce. 49 seconds to go on the clock. Where are they on track at the moment? These guys they're just coming up to Bergwerk now, so about half a lap to go yet. So it's not done yet between Martin Tomczyk and Earl Bamber. Ferrari versus Audi, both mid-engine cars. The Ferrari desperate for a result. The Audis, we know where they work everywhere, but especially around the Nordschleife. Can Earl Bamber keep this Ferrari up there? Nearly got a podium out of it. And this is the 32 qualifying races for the 24-hour in a few weeks' time. Porsche's got to run now, getting closer, going to get a little draft off the Ferrari there. I think he's going to get the job done.
Well, Tomczyk can get it done, because we failed to notice last time around he set the fastest lap of the race. Fast in the top three, an 8 minutes 31.8 second lap. He's moved past Earl Bamber, so the work of Pittard and Bamber in the Fricadelli Racing team still really impressive in that new
But that's on that massively quick section, the Closter toll there. Just got a draft from the Ferrari and just pulled out and didn't breeze past it, but boy oh boy. In the last, literally the last half lap of the race.
Yeah, well, we know the Audis work well. The R8 LMS Evo has been racing here for years, powering through. The latter third of the last lap. Well, I suppose the third of the last lap, but to be pedantic. But what's going to happen up the front? Adam Christodoulou leading by 6.2 seconds at the last timing interval, but he's powering along Dottingerhöhe unless anybody has got to within 1.5 seconds of them, which in fact, as they went onto the back straight, the long straight, that's what Fred Machiavicki has done in the Banzai Porsche. So riding on board with Christodoulou, all we can see in front is clear track as he powers down that long straight. The sweepers are coming, but in his mirrors, he would have seen two cars catching him. One is Fred Machiavicki, the Manthey Racing Porsche. The second is the 24 Porsche line speed by car connection, Mathieu Jaminet. The top three cars coming to the final sweepers covered by 3.2 seconds. Can Christodoulou hold on? I think he can. Machiavicki is being pushed super hard by Jaminet. A tiny bit of breathing space, but victory in the first of the qualifying races will go to the Get Speed Mercedes team, including that 30-second penalty, but the margin 1.1 seconds at the end. Top three cars covered by 3.5 seconds. The order: Christodoulou, Get Speed Mercedes, Fred Machiavicki, fabulous charge from Manthey Racing, the 911 Porsche, and the 24 line speed by car connection Porsche of Mathieu Jaminet. Oof, that was a goodie. How fast were they? Who's got the fastest lap of the race? For the moment, 8 minutes 28.978 seconds. It belongs to Fred Machiavicki, but I want to see what Martin Tomczyk can do when he comes through in what should be fourth place. We've just seen him past Earl Bamber about a minute ago in the Fricadelli Ferrari, and I think the top Audi will probably take the fastest lap of the race, and Martin Tomczyk, gosh, you forget how far behind they were. It was a minute and a half. He's only just gone through Schwalbenschwanz. He's now powering onto the Dottingerhöhe, but how fast this is a lap. If you get the fastest lap of the race, it will be bragging rights, but at the moment, bragging rights belong to the winning crew that sucked up that penalty of 30 seconds and still came on top. Get Speed Mercedes, number 2.
Well, you just said, Bruce, just over 3 seconds covering the top three, not for an NLS round, not for the Nürburgring 24-hour, but just for the Nürburgring 24-hour qualifying race of two in 3 weeks' time for the race. It's nuts.
Now, the one thing I thought could trip up this Let's Talk Martin Tomczyk to the line would be the chasing. Was he going to be able to drop Earl Bamber? Earl was using a slipstream behind him along the Dottingerhöhe, but I think will remain in. Yes, he does remain just under a second down of the Audi. So it's number 40 Audi of Scherer PHX in fourth place, but that was quite a big gap between them. It was 1 minute 28 seconds to that lead trio. But anyhow, really good run from the 40. Remember, that started from pit lane. It just came in ahead of the Ferrari of Earl Bamber, and now in behind the number 33 Porsche of Falcon Motorsports, the better place there, 2 cars. Joel Eriksson brings that through into 6.
8:28 for fastest lap for Makovic and Grello at the end there for second position. 8:28.
And that did remain faster than the best that Tomczyk could do. Tomczyk's an 8 minute 32 that time around, but he had the best margin before that. So bear in mind that number 40, brilliant finish, but they started from the pit lane. They finished 4th, also starting from the pit lane. The number 72 BMW Junior Team entry struggled a little bit in the hands of Johansson in the second half of the race, but a brilliant opening part by Conor De Filippi. And the other car that started from the pit lane finished in 14th place. That was Jelmer Berman in the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini. So, much of interest. The Get Speed team will have learned not to jump the start of the race, because that could have cost them big time. But I think the accolade of hauling back, you know, absorbing a 13-second penalty and coming out still on top.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to interview the driver, have a chat about that, and just find out the reasoning thought process, because it's an odd thing to do. As you said, we gave it sort of benefit of the doubt of had he just got going and the others didn't keep up. You mentioned the one car sitting behind that nobody else could again pass, because you can't update until you cross the line, etc. So there's so many permutations there, but in the end, race organisers deemed it was a jump start and a 30-second penalty, which was quite severe, because he pulled out 11 seconds on that first lap. I thought it was going to be a 10-second penalty, to be honest. Not saying that race organisers are wrong, that's what they've deemed. And that's why I said I thought it negated that 11-second lead. He'd still done it. Ironically, that would have been about spot on, because that's where they finished 1.1 second ahead. But 30 seconds, as you said, Bruce, just soak up a 30-second penalty and still win. That's pretty impressive, to say the least.
But we know for sure next time, maybe tomorrow's race, and most certainly for the 24 hours at the tail end of May, they'll try not to get the 30-second penalty. So obviously, Chris Doodle there, just coming off the GP circuit. He's got a bit of on board for you there. Came in through the GP circuit, got it into the pit lane. Hasn't got to the pit lane line where he needs to do 60k yet. So he's just left a couple number 11s and just laid some rub downs to go. Yeah, just a little bit of a celebrate, and then just pulled it up perfectly on the speed line. Absolute utter professional, but just saying I can still have some fun here. Which is good to hear and good to see. So the top 3 finishers coming in. Get Speed, the black Mercedes, number 2 at a standstill. First, Adam Christodoulou just about to climb out of that. Then alongside the Grello, the green and yellow Manthey Racing Porsche, brought into second place. Just 1.1 seconds down, Fred Makovic. And just behind them, under the podium, the red and white Porsche from Lion Speed by Car Collection, Mathieu Jaminet makes the top 3. Covered, let's just repeat that figure again. Covered by 3.458 seconds.
Good job.
Wait to hear what the drivers have to say, but the body language clear that Adam Christodoulou is pretty pleased with life. Fred Makovic will be delighted to have hunted down and passed fellow Porsche racer Mathieu Jaminet. And Jaminet equally will be less happy about that passing manoeuvre, but the job was done. No risks taken, one feels, today. All trying to be very sensible indeed. And Danny Juncadella is down with Adam Christodoulou, who's still got 3 more team members to shake hands with, but job very well done there out on the circuit tonight. Tricky conditions, but conditions we could very easily have all over again going into the darkness in the 24 hours of Nürburgring last weekend in May. Suddenly everything feels very dark. The sound has dropped away, those glorious engines have been switched off. And a winner's cap, a winner's Michelin cap coming out to the all-smiling Adam Christodoulou.
Congratulations. What a race. Time penalty, then now the first place.
Yeah, Danny didn't decide to make it too easy for us. But no, brilliant job. The car felt really good. It was so difficult at the end. You just can't see where the wet patches are, and you're just pushing, and I knew the Porsche was catching up a little bit each lap, and then on the last lap the traffic was horrendous. But anyway, brilliant job. Like, after last weekend, well deserved for the whole team, just for putting the car together, getting it all ready, because after last weekend we thought we weren't racing this weekend.
How much are you looking forward to the 24-hour race in 4 weeks?
I can't wait. It's my biggest race of the year. In fact, it's our biggest race of the year, and so we've come so close the last few years. We won it a few years ago, so we're trying to make it a second time for the win.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Cheers.
Und einmal zu Patrick, zum Zweitplatzierten von Grello.
Ja, nicht nur Platz 2, sondern Platz 2 und 3. I mean, it was an amazing fight till the end, Fred Marker. Just talk us a bit through. Congratulations, P2 in the end.
Yeah, a great job. I mean, at the end, at the beginning, I was quite lucky. You know, I was just following Mathieu. He was showing me the line. It was quite good, you know. And after we were definitely, when the pace started to come back, you know, when it was drier and drier, we had a strong car. But here, you know, when you have mixed condition, only one line, it's quite tough. It was a nice fight, and happy about this second place.
I mean, thank you very much, first of all, Fred. Fred just told you, you show him the line, and then he just overtook you, but it was a nice situation when you come to the Park Fermé. Just a little hug to one of your teammates in the Porsche factory squad, but here on the track you were competitors. Just how was the fight with Fred Mark in the end?
Yeah, it was fun. Obviously, like you said, I showed him the line. When you're in front, it's quite difficult, so yeah, I think it was nice for him to follow me, and obviously as he dried up, they had more pace, and we know it's just our first race. You know, we just come up with the allowance speed crew, so it's already an amazing result and a great job for the team to finish P3. But yeah, we definitely need to analyze and need to find more pace in the dry conditions.
Thank you very much, and then see you at the prize giving, und damit zurück zu euch. Wir sehen uns gleich bei der Siegerehrung.
So there was the inimitable and ever-enthusiastic Patrick Simon grabbing second and third place finishes, those Porsche Works racers. Fred Machiavicki with the largest smile on his face, and Mathieu Jaminet slightly, well, you know, tongue-in-cheek in many ways, just very happy, frankly. Top three here. They've tried the conditions, they've found the conditions, worked the conditions. Didn't have an answer for the Get Speed Mercedes, though. That will be slightly ominous to suck up a 30-second penalty and still come out on top. So just to run down the order, Get Speed Mercedes winning in the hands of Danny Juncadella, who started, jumped the start, got the penalty, handed over to Adam Christodoulou. Second place, the car that Bantai Porsche shared by Michael Christensen and Fred Machiavicki, just ahead of Matt Campbell and Mathieu Jaminet, driven line speed by Car Collection Porsche. Top three cars covered by 3.5 seconds after 2 hours. The number 40 Shearer PHX Audi moved up to fourth place. Remember, that started from pit out. Earl Bamber fifth for Ferrari. Fricadelli car he shared with David Pittard. Then the 33 Porsche from Falco Motorsports brought home by Joel Eriksson, completing the top six. And it's really a case of night falling very, very fast indeed, but still the podium ceremony to come. But out around the track, the marshals already going along and clearing their posts, waiting to be brought back in to get their cars and drive either back to the campsite, or if they're very lucky, a local hotel, or if they're local, to their houses. But they have plenty to do tomorrow, because the cars are out on the track at 8:15 local time. Yep, start early, the early birds get reward. That will be the qualifying session that will decide the grid for the second of the two qualifying races. That's starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 hours, double the fun, double the time of today's race, but in between the small matter, the 1 hour top qualifying session. Peter, explain how that works, because I'm really looking forward to that tomorrow.
Well, yeah, basically it's very simple. The SP9 cars on the road get the Nordschleife to themselves. Conditions, that's going to be everything, but they go at I think it's 30-second intervals, and they get the run. So obviously the whole track's being used to get a lot of cars on the track at the time. So the problem there is, of course, if somebody does have an incident, or even just a puncture or something, somebody else is going to catch up with it. So it all kind of goes slightly wrong then. But all things being equal, you get a shootout, as the days we used to do in FIA GT, which was always brilliant, and those LG Super weekends, which you'll remember only too well. But I tell you what surprised me today, and I think this will be interesting tomorrow in the track conditions on that shootout, and it might well see a bit of difference for the rest of the weekend there, because we've got this 4-hour race tomorrow. Just had this 2-hour one now. We've got top 10 qualifying tomorrow, and then a 4-hour race. I honestly thought BMWs would be stronger today. Not just because of the form this year, that's pretty obvious. They've had 3 rounds of NLS, they've won all 3. Different teams, different drivers, different combos. Kuba Gamaziak, as we said, came from Audi, a mid-engine car, gone to BMW. As you said quite rightly, you would expect, no matter how much skill and whatever, it takes a while to adapt. There's not going to be on your game as much as you are of a car that you've got so much experience in, and seat time. Seat time is everything. Kubica Mazepin, no, up there straight away, went around. They just haven't really been there today. On present form, NLS 1, 2 and 3, you'd have thought BMW was the strongest and Ferrari was pretty weak at the moment. Well, how quickly that can change in just 1 week. NLS 3 was a weekend ago. What have we got now? Mercedes at the top, with Porsche, 2 Porsches, and then an Audi again. The Ferrari, 4th position, Fricadelli. The first BMW is in 7th place.
In fairness, that did start from the pits, but
yeah,
it finished behind the Ferrari, which is still finding its form in its first season.
But as you said, the winning car had a 30-second penalty as well. So, yeah, it's fair that it started from the pits, and I'm not being negative. It's just a turn up from only a week ago. I'm really surprised. I'll be therefore saying that BMW is not very good in the West. Or am I being mischievous now?
Oh, well, you could well be. So the podium ceremony has started. The taller figure, 2 drivers out there. The slighter figure of Matt Campbell on far right of the podium, and alongside his French teammate Mathieu Jaminet. Not too downhearted about being passed right at the end. Fred Makiewicz, well, he did the passing to get that second place. He's delighted. And the Manthey Racing crew and Michael Christensen, who was really good on the opening sequence of the opening lap to move up from 6th place to 2nd in very short order. But the car that led away served a penalty, and Adam Christodoulou and Danny Unkadea out onto the top step of the podium for Get Speed. So for the local team, that's a really good result. And for both those drivers, job well done in what were clearly very, very tricky conditions.
Well, that's another thing I wanted to say in just summarising that race today. Tricky conditions, very wet to start with. Didn't think it would dry as consistently as it did, but that's what came to us. So it was linear. The circuit just kept getting better and better and better. So it's same for everybody. No change of conditions. No code 60s. So nothing that's affected. Sometimes you can see that in a race where somebody gets caught out at the wrong time, etc., and that can suddenly take 5 or 10 seconds and make a difference. You've always got to go into greater depth. But we've had consistent weather, no code 60s. The winning car had a 30-second penalty, and the 7th place car started from the pit lanes. It's going to make tomorrow interesting.
It really
that
will.
top 10 shootout is going to be all important for that race.
Oh, holy! But just another factor: we started with 60, magically gained another car through the race. But when you get the full field going out in the 24 hours, then of course
that's the first race I've ever commentated on where more cars finished than started. That's absolutely brilliant. We know why, but it does appeal to my sense of humour. It's brilliant.
So perverse.
That's drivers for you.
Trophies being awarded. And by Andrea Schmidt, one of the local ADAC divisions, and that's to Mathieu Jaminet, ever charming, raising his trophy. They're smiling. They didn't get the 2nd position they could have had. Doesn't matter. Top 3 consistent, but it's also the fact that a lot of their likely opponents were nowhere near them. So if you can refine 30 SP9 cars and come out in the top 3, you're doing well. But more than that, from 3rd place Jaminet to 4th place Martin Tomczyk, there was more than 1.5 minutes. So that was very good form that they found. But of course, when we come to the 24-hour race, there'll be more than just 2 drivers in each of the cars. They will have 3, sometimes even 4 runners in these crews. But it's about taking the hurdles, clearing the hurdles they're put in front of you. Maybe this was a fairly low one, just a 2-hour race, but the conditions could not have been trickier. Rain before the start, wet track, trying to gauge when to come in and go for slicks, or whether to go for slicks at all. But these crews all got it right. And just to let you know, all over again, Get Speed Mercedes took victory today by 1.1 seconds, and they did so having also served a 30-second penalty. So for their opponents, that is really rather ominous. But I can honestly say with top qualifying, well, we've got qualifying coming tomorrow, 90 minutes of that, then we've got top qualifying when we go live on radio and TV. That's at 10:30 local time in the Eiffel Forest, and at 1 o'clock we've got the start of the 2nd qualifying race, twice as long as today's, in daylight, mind. Maybe in rain, maybe in dry, who knows, but that's 4 hours starting at 1 o'clock, so plenty lying ahead of us. So much can happen in 2 hours of racing. It seems like 4 hours ago we started, but when thinking back across this race, in fact, keeping out of trouble, we said that at the start, you could really just block your pocketbook, damage the car, and not be able to take part in top qualifying tomorrow or in the 4-hour qualifying race. But I must say, Peter, the opening stints of the race, good overtaking, but I think we're just giving each other a little bit of slack, a little bit of space on the track, quite rightly so.
Yeah, I think it's possibly a product of these cars. These cars have got to do top 10 tomorrow, a 4-hour race, and you're going to be mindful, whether you say it or not. Drivers will always say, no, I was flat out, but you are mindful of not messing the car up. You need it for the 24-hour race in 4 weeks' time.
Well, that's absolutely the key. We hope you've enjoyed the broadcast today, Radio Show Limited on the network of channels, and we'll be back tomorrow with top qualifying and the 4-hour race. Thank you very much for joining me, Bruce Jones, and Peter Snowden.
Mal 378 Kilometer gilt es zu meistern.
Oh my gosh, this track is just incredible. This is such a fun place. It's amazing out there.
78 Kurven.
It's very, very tough race for the car, for the driver lineup.
Berg- und Talbahn, Höhenunterschied exakt 300 Meter. Die grüne Hölle wird sie genannt.
24 Sekunden, das geilste Rennen der Welt!
Das wird der absolute Knall. Das ist wirklich der absolute Wahnsinn, was ihr da aufgebaut habt und konstruiert habt. Sensationell.
Es gibt fast keinen Streckenabschnitt, wo nicht irgendwelche Freunde oder Freunde von früher und Bekannte stehen. Das ist schon geil.
Mal so viele Leute am Zaun sitzen, überall hängen BMW-Flaggen, Mercedes-Flaggen, Audi-Flaggen.
Das 24-Stunden-Rennen haben wir alle im Herzen.
Der Pulsschlag nimmt zu.
Man guckt halt schon, seitdem man klein ist, 24-Stunden-Rennen, hat immer geträumt davon, dass man irgendwann mal im Auto selber sitzt.
Ob die Fans auf der Tribüne, die Beteiligten der Boxengasse und wer auch immer uns zuschaut, das wird eine ganz große Party.
Der Start wird es in sich haben.
So, das Rennen ist eröffnet.
Die 24 Stunden gehen los und mit
Berührung und Abflug. Das ist das Ende für den Krello. Also ich habe ja im Motorsport schon alles erlebt. Aber dass sich zwei Brüder hier abschießen.
It's a very tough job to find the right mixture, being aggressive and being gentle.
Schrecksekunde in der Eifel. Das Auto rollt da führerlos und herrenlos. Sowas habe ich überhaupt noch nicht gesehen, Uwe. Wow, was sind das für Bilder?
Ein wunderschöner Sonnenuntergang ist da draußen.
This track is so special when you drive at night.
Typical Nürburgring 24 hours, survive the night.
It's party. You can see their little fireworks, their barbecues, but on the other hand, you're flying with 250 k's through the fucking forest and over the bumps. There's not such a lot of time to look left and right.
Und liegt an der Vernunft.
letztendlich, ob es kracht oder nicht.
It's not the Nürburgring if it's not raining.
It's 50% dry, but completely dry, and 50% heavy wet. Dangerous.
Das ist saugefährlich, da geht anscheinend gar nichts mehr. Was ist da los?
That's the most important thing, to finish the race.
Da kommt der Sieger, die Eifel tobt.
And it's a particular credit to the crew for the work that they did.
We lose together, we win together. And that's for us importanter than any kind of results.
Ein Team, die Rädchen haben sich ineinander vereint.
Wahnsinn. Haben wir so lange drauf gewartet, haben wir so lange vermisst. Der Start wird es in sich haben.